up to additional 10% rewards at over 10,000 merchants, including Adidas, Costco, H&M, Office Depot, Sam's Club, Shake Shack, and many more. No enrollment is required. Automatically receive the bonus card rewards. Countless opportunities for you to earn. Power up your earnings now with the Crypto.com Visa card.
In another incident, while hosting Bible study at his house, as Brady and his two roommates would host Bible study meetings, Brady had been showing off a firearm he owned when he accidentally fired it. The bullet went through the kitchen wall and entered the hood of his roommate's car, which was parked outside. Brady had run outside and pushed the damaged car into the garage before turning off the house lights and hoping police didn't show up. And they didn't. It was instead a neighbor who'd heard the shot and approached Brady. And for at least the second time in his life, Brady was warned that he was going to hurt someone if he wasn't more careful. And it would soon come true. After word of Brady accidentally firing the gun inside the house in front of the children made the rounds, parents stopped sending their kids to Bible study with Brady. However, his roommates were even more freaked out, because when they asked Brady what he would have done if he'd accidentally shot him or Nick, and law enforcement had shown up, Brady explained that he would have shot the other one, and told law enforcement that he'd been forced to use his weapon on them when they had both gone crazy. These roommates soon became former roommates, understandably. His behavior following the end of the engagement established some disturbing notions that seemed to have emerged in Brady's mind. Brady spent much of his time online, with his roommates saying his free time was spent in front of the downstairs computer, and even his reality was augmented with role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons. Brady would also take part in LARPing, which is role-playing while physically portraying characters. Along with groups of children and adults, he was said to engage in mock battles and sword fights. He also had an affinity for truly terrible poetry, and was obsessed with medieval weaponry, which was displayed prominently throughout his home. Brady was clearly a man for whom the make-believe meant much, and very little stretching of the imagination was required of him to render this virtual existence into reality. He slipped effortlessly into a fantasy life, but Brady's fall would be steep, and the fantasy world in which he landed was not one he could easily wrench himself from, had he even bothered to try. It was while at a bar one evening in the early summer of 2014 that Brady actually shared some of his dark inner thoughts. While inebriated, Brady spoke to the bar manager, who found the whole situation to be suspicious. That's because Brady wasn't just talking. In fact, he told the manager that he was acting out his warped thinking. According to Trey, the bar manager, Brady had walked into the premises close to 6 p.m. Then, over a beer, he'd started to talk about women. After explaining to Trey how Tina had left him and allegedly taken his money, Brady went on to say that all women are crazy. Brady couldn't understand why, according to Trey, they didn't want to be treated well. So what he had decided, thanks to a newfound clarity fueled by heartache and bitterness, was that he was done with women like Tina, who didn't want to be treated nicely. Brady had decided that he would seek out women who wanted to be mistreated. And just where would Brady find this type of woman? Why, Craigslist, of course. Between 2011 and 2014, the platform was receiving a lot of media attention for the adult services offered, and because several convicted murderers had used it to lure their victims. So when Brady confessed over a beer at Mulligan's Bar how he was now only looking for women who wanted to be mistreated, he shared one additional disturbing detail. This item of interest was in fact so significant that it alone formed Trey's justification for calling the police after Brady left the venue. You see, Brady told him that he'd found a new woman already, And in fact, she just so happened to be locked up in his basement at that very moment. After Trey pulled Brady's information from his credit card, police made a welfare check at the Taft Avenue home where Brady lived. When they encountered Brady and advised him that someone at Mulligan's had overheard his conversation about a woman being imprisoned in his basement, Brady laughed and invited the officers inside. In the basement, he said they would be able to see for themselves that the young woman in question was safe. And when police officers were able to determine that the woman by the name of Melissa was of age and in fact unharmed, they thanked Brady for being so cooperative and left the house. But this wasn't the full story, and this wasn't the last time the police would see Melissa. Melissa also wouldn't be the last woman Brady met on Craigslist. She would, however, be the last one to survive.
Albertans struggling with heavy debts on credit cards or other bills, we have great news for you in February 2024. Finally, there are debt relief programs extended to every Alberta resident with $10,000 or more in unsecured debts. Click the blue button under this video to see if you're eligible for these debt relief programs in Alberta. Select Albertans may be eligible to reduce what's owing by 3/4 of their balances. For example, let's say there's $10,000 owing on credit cards. That amount could be reduced to as little as $2,500 or, let's say, $500 a month is paid on debts. That could be cut down to as little as $150 a month. There's no contact details required to see if you could qualify, and it doesn't cost a penny to discover your options. Click the blue button under this video to see if you could reduce your monthly payments. After you click the button, a new tab will open on your device, and you'll see the exact same assessment you see on the screen right now. Simply tap your answers that you see on the screen to determine if you could be eligible. Click the blue button now to get started.
The relationship started off somewhat rocky, with Melissa in a suitcase in the backseat of his car. Melissa had recently moved back home to Michigan after living in New York for some time. Looking to meet people and perhaps find a friends with benefits type relationship, Melissa had placed an ad in Craigslist. Within the hour, Brady responded. It didn't take long for them to move their conversation off Craigslist. Melissa would tell Brady that she was living with friends in the nearby city of Coldwater. He offered for Melissa to move in with him. He also suggested that he would be able to come and pick her up personally from Coldwater. Before leaving to get her in mid-May, Brady had asked Melissa if it would be okay with her to travel back to Wyoming in a suitcase. Assuming that this was a fetish of some sort, Melissa had agreed. Although she considered the request somewhat strange, which is perhaps the understatement of the century, when Brady had shown up with a black suitcase, she freely climbed inside. After being placed in the backseat of Brady's yellow Chevy Cobalt, the two had traveled for approximately 2 hours until, without warning, Brady stopped the car and unzipped the suitcase, only to spray an unknown substance into it and all over Melissa. When she came to, Melissa was still inside the suitcase, which was now located in Brady's garage. What happened next to a still groggy Melissa remained somewhat blurry, thanks to the unknown substance sprayed on her, which Melissa would later believe to be computer cleaner. After presenting her with a slave contract, the terms and conditions, Melissa agreed, and Brady proceeded to walk her around the house. When they entered the basement, where there were 2 small rooms on the left side of the stairs, joined by the bathroom with the furnace room on the right, things took a turn for the worse. Brady suddenly holding a gun to Melissa's head, while locking a heavy metal chain around her neck. During the next 8 or so weeks, the multiple brutal assaults on Melissa would be interrupted only by Brady's rotating work schedule, which allowed for the house cleaning contingency and the master-slave contract to be fulfilled. Scattered throughout her time in the torture chamber were outside visits. Melissa had even gone to the Golden Corral and met Brady's parents, and Brady had announced to co-workers that he was going to marry Melissa, after knowing her for mere weeks. The relationship is murky at best, with moments where Melissa consented to certain aspects, such as the night the bartender called the police after talking to Brady. At that time, when police found her in Brady's basement, they determined that she was unharmed and currently consenting, but that wouldn't remain the case for long. Although Melissa attributed much of Brady's behavior to their agreement, the violence was very much real. So too were the nights Melissa spent asleep in the dog cage, as was Brady's ultimate fantasy of using the taser on her. Although she never watched any of the footage, Melissa also believed the cameras to be constantly recording. In the early afternoon of June 19, 2014, however, reality would come knocking at Brady's Taft Avenue residence. He wouldn't be home to hear it, as Melissa had waited for him to leave for work before she called the ambulance. She would be taken to the Metro Hospital ER, and it was there that the Wyoming police officer would discuss with her what had transpired with Brady. According to Melissa, on the morning before she called for an ambulance, Brady had discovered that she'd been in contact with her ex-boyfriend. Upon this discovery, Brady had twisted her nose and punched her in the face, splitting her lip. When the officer asked if such an incident had ever happened before, Melissa shared that the assault wasn't Brady's first. Several days earlier, Brady had read her text messages and come across one that mentioned leaving him. Brady's immediate threat to Melissa after a brutal beating was that he would chain her up in the basement. 4 days after she broke free from the basement for a safe house, Brady reported Melissa to the police for allegedly stealing his property while he was at work. Like Tina, and according to Brady, Melissa had robbed him, and she also apparently left him while he was at work. Melissa, on the other hand, reported the assault, but requested that no criminal charges were filed against Brady, for reasons that aren't entirely clear. If that horrified you, Brady was really only getting started. On July 12th, less than a month after Melissa escaped, Brady once again turned to Craigslist, where he found the following post. I need $50 by 3:30 p.m. today. I can pay you back later tonight, but I need gas and some mess quick. Everyone has bronchitis at my house, and I don't want to get sick. I'm 8 months pregnant, and my lungs are all squished as is. If you could help me out, me and my daughter will greatly appreciate it. Well, we're looking for donations if possible. Kinda in a tight spot, and we have a baby on the way. As far as the fund goes, there won't be any male-on-male action or redacted on me unless it's my boyfriend. Condoms are necessary, and I'm 18. He's 25. I recently dyed my hair, so it's not black or brown anymore. Brady responded, and an exchange began. I can swing $120. Wow, really? Can you host? I can host. What are you thinking? I'm 25. Yes, you both need a ride. Where you want me to pick you up at? No, we can travel. Just can't host is all. Where would you like to meet up? I'd like to redact it outside in a park around 11:30. That okay? Can you? Can you make it? I don't know. I don't want to get in trouble for indecent exposure or anything. I can't go to jail being 8 months pregnant. It's cop-free. It's a park, but behind it are a lot of woods. No cops at all. Not my first time there. I can redacted you as you redacted your boyfriend. Okay, do we need to bring the condoms? No, I've got a rubber for me. Go in past the baseball diamonds to the grass lot in the back. Follow the trail to the right till you get to the meadow. I have a dry blanket for us 3. Okay, I guess we can. Sorry for the late reply. We had to talk about it and your messages kept getting sent to the spam box. What time? Midnight. Sounds great. If I give an extra 40, can I bareback? Okay, will do. Thanks for the donation. We may be a tad bit late because the boyfriend is stinking up the bathroom at the moment. When he gets out, we'll be on our way. In an exclusive interview with EWU, 18-year-old Brooke Ann Slocum was described by her mother, Deb Hotchkiss.
She was the sweetest girl ever. She would help anybody out. Anybody, she would help them out. She loved her family. She was a beautiful soul. Beautiful soul. She just got tied up in something evil.
Brooke Slocum was known to show kindness toward others in difficult situations. Bothered by the homelessness plaguing Grand Rapids, Brooke, who herself didn't have a fixed address, would hold up a sign asking for aid, only to turn over the cash to someone else so that they could get off the street for a night. Brooke was already slim and worried about her next meal, yet she would pack lunches for the hungry. A natural nurturer, Brooke wanted nothing more than to find love and make a family of her own. She was 8 months pregnant in July of 2014, carrying a very wanted little girl who she planned to name Audie. It is, however, difficult to determine whether Brooke believed that what she was experiencing with her boyfriend, Charlie Oppenheer, was in fact love. From the outside, it certainly doesn't appear to have been the case. Deb recalls meeting Charlie and her feelings about the relationship between him and her daughter.
The first time I met him, I was very uneasy. Didn't have very good feelings. A lot of times I would call her, she wouldn't call me back. He was controlling of her, and he always had to be with her when she came to visit me. So at that point, I knew it was not a healthy relationship.
25-year-old Charlie and 18-year-old Brooke's relationship was turbulent. While Charlie was the father of baby Audie, he already had 2 children and an on-and-off relationship with their mother, Rose. During the times when he wasn't living with Brooke, and even while Brooke was trying to win him back, Charlie had continued to be intimate with Rose. After a year and a half of Brooke being with Charlie, meaning they'd gotten together when Brooke was still a minor, Charlie discovered that Brooke was pregnant.
She wanted Audie so bad, so bad she needed her in her life.
He'd reportedly told Rose that he planned to end the relationship with Brooke. But apparently feeling sorry for Brooke, Rose had allowed her and Charlie, whom she'd twice previously filed domestic violence charges against, to move into her house. A pregnant Brooke and Charlie were now living with Charlie's ex-partner and the mother of his 2 young children in her home. The sleeping arrangement? Brooke was on the couch, while Charlie slept in the bed with Rose. Eventually, though, Brooke would be kicked out, with Charlie following shortly thereafter. In July of 2014, Charlie's life was perhaps on the upswing. He was back working after being furloughed for a lengthy period, and by all accounts was doing well on the job. He'd even recently purchased a new to him, dark green 1995 Saab. It was, in fact, contact from police about the Saab that had alerted his father, Gerard Jerry Charles Oppenheer, to the fact that something was amiss with his son. When he received a phone call from an officer on July 13, 2014, to ask him if a green Saab found at the Gazan water tower was registered to Charlie, Jerry had tried to reach his son. Always prompt to respond via phone or text, this time Charlie neither called nor texted his father in return. Another 3 days passed. Charlie was still radio silent, and despite being checked on several times by authorities, the Saab hadn't left its grassy parking spot in Gazan Park. That was when Jerry walked into the Wyoming Police Department to report his son missing. Unbeknownst to Jerry, while at the police station's desk window, detectives in the back were being called out to Gazan Park. A body had just been found near the trailhead. The officer who was back at the park to check again on the seemingly abandoned Saab had walked the trail and noticed a used condom wrapper, and several smoked cigarettes. There was also a pool of blood resting atop a mud puddle. A discarded and upside-down brown flip-flop was located nearby. Concealed underneath some dead tree limbs was Charlie's body. There was an unnatural appearance to the positioning of the sticks, rendered only more macabre for officers on the scene by the human arms sticking out, as if attempting to escape from the makeshift funeral pyre. Flies were collecting near the puddle. The faint odor of decay hung in the still, humid air. Yet Jerry wouldn't be told that his son had been located. Charlie's identity first needed to be confirmed, and this was going to be more difficult without a head, as Charlie had been decapitated and his head was missing. Also missing, 8 months pregnant Brooke.
The cops came to my house and told me she was missing. Okay. It took them 3 days to contact me after Charles was murdered. But they came to my house, and my other daughter was here, and she called me, and she told me Brooke was missing. So I flew home from work, and they told me where Charlie was at when he was murdered. And me and my husband and a few friends flew to Grand Rapids and started searching the woods. The police told me that there was no need for us to go there. They already combed the area, but as a mom, you got to double check, and hopefully you could find something. But we did not end up finding her there.
In the very early hours of July 13th, 2014, hours after Brady Ostrike had made an arrangement to meet someone on Craigslist at midnight, an on-duty officer pulled into a mobile gas station. While there, he'd observed a white SUV driving past, but then noticed that the vehicle circled around and stopped across from him. When the occupants reached the officer, they informed him of a suspicious situation that had occurred at the park. While parked and sitting in the back seat, the teen's attention was drawn to a man in a white mask peering into the vehicle. They were so scared of this masked stranger, in fact, that the driver jumped into the front seat and sped away. The last thing he remembered seeing was the murky figure heading toward a dark car parked in the back of the lot. By the time Charlie's father reported his son missing, police had already started checking local hotels for him and Brooke. But that same day, Charlie's decapitated body was located. It was information gleaned from phone and computer records that led to the emergence of Brady Ostrike as a suspect. Officers soon began conducting surveillance on Brady's house, and since they weren't entirely sure if he was involved in Charlie's death or Brooke's disappearance, they waited for him or his Chevy Cobalt to move. But they didn't have to wait long. In the evening of July 16th, just after police started watching the house, they witnessed Brady backing the car out of the driveway. Officers followed him, and a high-risk traffic stop was conducted, and Brady was pulled over. Though he initially responded to officers' verbal instructions, at one point Brady started to reach over to the passenger seat. Despite being ordered to halt this movement, he slammed his door shut and barreled away. A brief chase ensued, but when Brady approached 131 to turn north, he appeared to lose control of his vehicle and crashed head-on into the guardrail. An even more brief standoff took place. Then, a gunshot resounded. During the siege, several officers left the scene of the crash and proceeded to start what would become a multi-day search of Brady's home. The items located inside the house were not much different than those found in the badly damaged car, which was being combed through while Brady's body lay beside it, underneath a yellow covering, only his boots visible. Multiple tasers, knives, ammunition, plastic tarp, and a collapsible shovel were, perhaps unsurprisingly, found inside the Cobalt. Also located, which perhaps solved at least one mystery, was a white mask, the same one Brady wore when he first approached and frightened the teenagers, and then headed over to Charlie Oppenheer's green Saab. When officers opened the trunk right there on the moonlit road, they were greeted with the sight of a black suitcase. Inside that suitcase was the body of an unclothed Brooke, in the fetal position as if to protect her precious Audie. Though it was, of course, too late. Brooke's cause of death was ligature strangulation. A baby pink blanket was used to cover Brooke and her deceased daughter in the suitcase. But it was the footage found on the cameras located throughout Brady's basement that truly disturbed officers. Although the video recordings would answer the almost unspeakable question of just what had happened to Brooke during the intervening days from when Charlie's body was found to when hers was discovered in Brady's trunk, the answer would be more horrifying than anyone could have predicted. As a mother knows, Deb was aware that what would come out in a trial would only devastate her further. And as a grandmother-to-be who had a nursery prepared and waiting for the imminent arrival of baby Audie, that's saying a lot.
10:30, 11, it was at nighttime that the cops came and told me that she had died. And I asked them if my granddaughter was alive, and they said no.
Making abundant use of the torture setup he'd casually prepared, Brady assaulted and tortured Brooke multiple times over the 5 days he held her prisoner. He forced her to smoke marijuana and put a chain around her neck. Her arms were attached to the pulley system that Brady was seen installing in earlier footage. Despite there being no sound in the footage captured by Brady's own cameras, Brooke's expressions communicate her distress. The tears shed were silent, yet resonant. Brady later strangled her to death. As Charlie's skull was found in March of 2019 on a remote farm about 30 minutes north of Gazan Park, confirming his cause of death to be from a gunshot to the head, there remained just one baffling element to the entire sickening affair. The search warrant on Brady's house was literally being executed as his body arrived at the morgue. Detectives found many, and we do mean many, items of evidence. Listed are handguns and rifles, knives and swords, a machete, throwing knives, one long-handled hatchet. There are whips and chains, ropes and handcuffs, a taser, metal collars and restraints, even a shock prod. Add to these the assorted adult toys and condoms and unmarked bottles of pills found scattered throughout the basement, a human molar, Velcro skull mask, black Hannibal mask, and a dirty baby doll with a fixed noose. Women's lingerie, clothing, and jewelry. Also located was a map affixed to a basement wall. The U.S. map, if possible, dwarfed even the most obscure and bizarre items taken into evidence. On the map, all over it in fact, were different colored pushpins clearly intended to denote something. With Brady no longer able to offer any insight as to the apparently single, clean, and organized item in the home, it would be Melissa, his survivor, who would provide detectives with the answer Brady had given her. The pins, according to Brady, represented locations where he'd stashed food and weapons in advance of the apocalypse. Why this kind of planning and kits were necessary is likely to never be known. When news broke about the true horror of what Brady did, his former fiancée Tina spoke publicly to say that she was shocked. The guy I know and the guy who did this are two different people. She claims she wants to remember Brady as the man she knew, and not the monster he apparently became, saying, quote, "He was my teddy bear. He had mood swings, but who doesn't?" We wanted Deb, Brooke's mom, to have the last word on this tragic case.
I was glad that he took himself out, because I don't know if I would have been able to sit in a courtroom. I've seen enough pictures through the cops, through the information that they had, that it was just sickening. I got so much support from my community, from Saranac, from all over the state of Michigan, from all over the United States, and even across the world. I had people texting me, messaging me, sending me cards in the mail. It was just overwhelming, but a blessing at the same time. And every now and then, somebody will send me a letter or a card in the mail. Overwhelmed and blessed and grateful that they still think about Brooke and think about me, even though it was so very tragic ending. There are a lot of good people in this world, and there's a lot of bad people in this world.
As a parting question for Deb, we asked her how she keeps Brooke and Audie's memory with her.
They're in my house, they're in my heart. I talk about them a lot to my family and friends. I keep her still going in my life.
We want to extend the utmost gratitude to Deb for speaking with us. Today, we're covering 5 cases with twists that I know you won't see coming. In May 1994, a house was being renovated in San Marino, California. The project was going to plan, except that when the backyard was dug up for a pool to be installed, human remains were found buried there. The discovery was shocking for the area known to be a rather sleepy suburb. The remains had been buried about 4 feet underground and wrapped up in 3 plastic bags tied together with twine. The bones were believed to belong to an adult white male who had been bludgeoned on the head by a blunt object and stabbed 6 times, including slashes in the flannel shirt the deceased was wearing. Before the house's most recent owners, the house had belonged to Dee Dee Soas. Dee Dee had lived there with her son John and his wife Linda in the 1980s. John was a computer programmer and his wife worked as a sci-fi artist. Also on the property was a British baronet named Christopher Chichester, who Dee Dee let live rent-free in the guest house. John and Linda didn't stay with Dee Dee for long.
There's three things you can really do here. First one, you need to have a place that is conducive for anyone.
She never fought. She never did. And next thing you know, she's dead. And I'm like, well, this is great. And I guess, I don't know, I got scared or nervous or I don't know. It was juicy. It didn't taste like blood, though. I mean, it tasted like a charbroiled piece of steak.
She really wasn't sure what she fed. Why didn't you call somebody to let her check out?
Because something else is in control.
When detectives in Coffee County, Tennessee were called out to a remote property late one summer evening to respond to a peculiar claim, they had no idea what they would soon uncover would reveal a horrific and gruesome crime. In a chilling turn of events, detectives were left to puzzle out not only if someone had committed the crime, but if they'd resorted to cannibalism following a bizarre accident, or if, in fact, the stomach-churning act had been the fulfillment of a fantasy and an unhealthy obsession with serial killers. On the evening of June 8, 2014, Jason Walker was walking across the yard of his rural Tennessee home when he heard a voice call his name from somewhere in the yard. Jason turned, slightly impatient. It was 6:30 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon, and he was eager to get on with his preparations for the upcoming week. Looking to the adjacent yard, he saw his 37-year-old neighbor, Gregory Scott Hale, standing at the fence and motioning for him to come closer. Jason sighs inwardly but approaches the short chain-link fence separating them anyway, having no idea that the conversation he was about to have would be one of the most horrifying of his life. "Where's your backhoe?" Scott says by way of greeting. Jason replies that it isn't there, and he won't have it back for a few days. Scott appears somewhat irritated by Jason's response, prompting him to ask why Scott is suddenly so interested in his backhoe. Scott, in response, makes a tasteless and gruesome joke about needing it to hide the evidence. Jason, nonplussed, stares at him in silence, prompting Scott to continue by pointing to the two 5-gallon buckets sitting just a few feet away, near Scott's burn pit. He explains that he tried burning everything in the burn pit, but it hadn't worked, so he figures he should just bury it all as fast as possible. Jason listens to this reasoning for the use of his backhoe before growing tired of his weird neighbor's stupid joke, and abruptly telling Scott he needs to go and that he'll talk to him later. 3 hours later at 9:30 p.m., Sheriff's Corporal Brad Roberts is sitting at the front desk of the Coffee County Sheriff's Department when a man approaches, tense and anxious to speak with someone immediately. Corporal Roberts tells him to come back first thing tomorrow morning, but the man is insistent. It's Jason Walker, and he needs the police to listen to the joke his neighbor has just told him, because the longer he's thought about it, the less it started feeling like a joke. At first, the corporal is skeptical, as it sounds ridiculous. Violent crime is almost unheard of in tiny Coffee County. But Jason is so adamant, so sure, that the deputy starts getting a sick feeling as well. He radios for 2 more officers, Deputy Rainey and criminal investigator Dendy, to accompany Jason back to his home to check out the story. Upon arriving at Jason's property, investigators made sure to come in through the back, driving without headlights so as not to alert anyone in the Scott household. Jason and the 2 officers walked through the darkness, shining their flashlights through the chain-link fence to illuminate the 2 5-gallon buckets, their bright white plastic almost glowing in the dim light. C.I. Dendy picks up a garden hoe lying in Jason's grass and uses it to reach over the fence and snag the handle of the closest bucket, lifting it over to their side. Grasping the lid, he peels it off to reveal the ghastly contents, causing all 3 men to reel back in horror. It's a woman's severed head and hand. 3 days earlier, on July 6th, CCTV footage at Oak Liquor shows a woman entering the store at around 3:30, striding in confidently and heading to the back of the store before stopping and looking around hesitantly. This is Lisa Marie Hyder, and unbeknownst to everyone in the store, this is her last day alive. She scans the back shelves, curling her long auburn ponytail around her fingers and adjusting her large black sunglasses before walking up to the man who has just passed her in the aisle. She isn't from here. She's only traveled up from where she lives in Dunlap, Tennessee to spend time with her ex-husband and 2 young children, the youngest of which is only a year old. Just before entering the store, Lisa had been on the phone with her ex-husband, trying to get a ride from where she was to the house, but he was unloading a truck in Huntsville and couldn't get to her until he was finished. Lisa was stuck where she was, and she needed a ride, which is why police suspect she approached the man in the liquor store. As for why she chose the liquor store, according to her ex-husband, Lisa had been allegedly struggling recently with alcoholism, which is why they'd split up a few months earlier. Though she had struggled with a dependency to alcohol before, a recent devastating piece of news had kicked her problems into overdrive. Lisa had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer and had only been given 6 months to live. Lisa was reportedly beyond devastated by the news, drinking to cope and apparently end her life faster, spiraling emotionally and behaving more recklessly than she usually did. As she's talking to both the man and the cashier, she adjusts her sunglasses and for a brief moment, a black right eye is visible. How she received this particular injury is still unknown, but it would pale in comparison to the injuries she would receive later that night, because the man she's speaking to and will eventually exit the liquor store with is Gregory Scott Hale. Back in Jason's yard, C.I. Dendy and Deputy Rainey are radioing for backup, ordering for crime scene units to be deployed immediately and for search warrants to be written. As backup arrives, they head into the Scott residence to place Gregory Scott Hale under arrest, finding him sleeping on a couch in one of the filthy garages. Given what they've just discovered in the white buckets, the detectives were no doubt disturbed by the items Scott has decided to use to decorate this space. These items were later discovered to be old Halloween props from a haunted attraction Scott had worked the previous year. Scott makes no attempt to resist, and when initially confronted, admits to being the one who killed the woman and had placed her limbs and head in the 2 buckets, and had buried the rest of her in the burn pit nearby. Police take him in, and the following audio is the never-before-heard interview from that night. It has been analyzed by a licensed professional counselor.
Scott, you were talking to James out there at your house a minute ago, and he advised you of your rights, okay? I'm Chad Martin. I don't know if you remember me or not. I worked with your mom up here for many, many years.
Chad Parton working with Scott's mother would almost certainly imply she'd worked as a member of law enforcement. But while Scott's mother, father, and son all being mere feet away asleep in the house while Scott committed this murder, none of their statements or information have ever been released.
Anyway, I'm going to go over your rights again this time since we're up here in the office, okay? If you decide to answer any questions now without a lawyer present, you still have the right to stop answering at any time. You also have the right to stop answering at any time until you talk with a lawyer, okay? This isn't a mission, and it's just that we advised you of your rights, okay? It's right there, Scott.
At least it's over.
Well, I know you was getting in some details there, but you kind of skipped ahead pretty good bit. How'd you meet this girl?
She came up to me at the liquor store and said, can I go home with you?
Here in town?
Yeah, at Oak.
What day was this?
Friday.
Is this the girl that you brought in to the house? I mean, your mom and dad saw her? Okay.
The home detectives are referring to would be that of Scott's mother and father, as 37-year-old Scott had lost his job sometime prior and moved himself and his 14-year-old son into his parents' house. According to a narcissistic narrative spun by Scott, which he repeatedly mentions and embellishes throughout the interview, Lisa had apparently immediately found him so attractive that day. She immediately begged him to take her to his home and had decided she wanted to live with him in his mom's house before they had even left the liquor store. Then, once reaching the house and sitting in the grimy garage where Scott kept all of his Halloween decorations, she apparently couldn't keep her clothes on, and Scott had to repeatedly ask her to put her shirt back on because his parents might return from picking up his son at any minute. Considering Lisa was only in Manchester that day to meet with her children, whom, according to those who knew her, she adored more than life itself, it seems far more likely she simply asked Scott for a ride, and the rest of this story is a fabrication. Though it's likely we'll never know for sure.
Made what I was drinking on, and she got her a pint of 100 proof vodka, and you can come hang out with me. And then she got in her head that she could just move in, and Mom ain't gonna let that happen, We did have, it was consensual, and she wanted to be choked, and us being drunk, and
Was this Friday night or was this
Friday night, it got carried away, and I guess I strangled her, and
Where was y'all at when this happened?
in my garage.
Was you using a rope or
Hands in a shirt. The shirt's in the garbage can in my garage.
rope?
At this point in the interview, Scott once again begins boasting about how into him Lisa was, describing in explicit detail how much she wanted him, how turned on she was by his tattoos, not once mentioning his thoughts or feelings concerning her. It's unclear why Scott is so desperate to convince the detectives that Lisa was interested in him that he's making up unconvincing details. He may be trying to make sure he isn't on the hook for assault, or it's just the narcissistic side of his personality coming through. Either way, detectives just keep trying their best to keep him on track.
So you just show me how you done that.
And then I got off, I guess. She didn't. She's like, keep choking me. And I kept on. I put a shirt around her neck and tightened it up. And, she's supposed to have, when it was, and she never fought. She never did. And next thing you know, she's dead. And I'm like, this is great. And I guess, I got scared or nervous or I don't know.
Scott's account of strangulation is interesting because, according to the autopsy, the soft tissue of the neck above the fourth cervical vertebrae are examined. No soft tissue hemorrhage is seen. The hyoid bone and thyroid cartilage are intact. No contusions of the neck are seen. While the autopsy does conclusively rule that Lisa's death was caused by homicidal violence, no single cause is listed. There were no drugs other than alcohol in her system, and her lungs showed no evidence of smoke inhalation. So exactly how Scott ended her life or why he would feel the need to lie about the exact manner of her death is unknown.
What happened after that, Scott? I mean, you realized that she had passed. Did you try to give her CPR or anything? Did you try to resuscitate her or anything?
No, I don't know how to do CPR.
Okay.
I smacked her on the face a few times and,
No response.
opened up her eyes, and her eyes were not all the way shut.
Yeah.
I pulled up her eyelid and covered, and then moved it. Her pupil didn't dilate or move or nothing. I've been wanting to go into a psychiatric hospital because I've already been having urges, and they've just been getting greater and greater, and I don't know if it's what, but I guess before I could get to one. So I'm watching a lot of serial killer stuff. I don't know if that was getting in my head. I've been having some crazy things happening at the house, like as far as unexplainable, supernatural, whatever. I suffer from sleep paralysis, not sleep apnea, but paralysis. I'll come to, I'm completely paralyzed and I can't move.
Despite Scott's best efforts to make himself seem troubled or possibly insane, what he's describing isn't a disorder, as it happens to people fairly regularly.
But you're conscious.
Yeah, and not this last time it happened, but the time before. Because I looked it up on the internet, and I found out a lot of people that claim to be abducted by aliens suffer from it. I've also looked up, it was a demon, and anybody who knows my reputation knows I'm into the dark stuff. Ever this last time, not this last time, the time before it happened, I come to, it was a deep paralysis, and I could hear something above me breathing, and something slid my fan. The way I was laying on the bed, something slid my fan all the way over, like where I look over, laying down. Fan stayed running, and that's impossible, because that cord's barely long enough to plug in where it was. Mm-hmm. And ever since then, I've had a headache, constant. It's been about 2.5 months, and a beeping sound for about 2 weeks. I had an episode, give or take, a week ago, and a beeping sounds back in my head. And just ever since then, it's just, my thoughts ain't been right.
Yeah.
How long you been out of rehab?
This question posed by Detective Sherrill seemingly comes out of nowhere and isn't mentioned at any point in the interview before or after now. Since both of the detectives seem to know Scott from before this crime, it might just be prior knowledge.
I left it. I didn't even stay 24 hours because
How long ago was it been when you went though?
about 2 Februarys ago.
You ain't used any meth in the past couple of months or nothing like that?
Mm-mm.
No pills?
I took an Adderall
When did you take it?
maybe a week ago.
Pretty much all you've been doing is drinking, man.
Drinking, smoking weed. Might do Percocets, Nitros, but I don't take those to get high on them. I've abused my body so much, I hurt.
So once you realize that and she's there and you're like, okay, how long did you sit and think, or?
Did you call anybody, tell your parents, or?
Mm-mm.
So what happened from there?
I covered her up with a blanket on the love seat, you know, pondering what to do, which I should have just called y'all. But another part of me was wanting, you know, it was like, you done went this far, you know. And that's when I pulled her off the love seat and I put her underneath the boat. Kind of threw some stuff on top of her, so his mom or dad walked out there and looked to see if she was there, you know, because, you know, what I told mom, I was like, well, she's gone. She got mad because I wouldn't stand up to you and let her stand here, and she just took off walking. I waited till they went to sleep, and I guess I just let my twisted side take over. I did have a personality issue.
Make room for a new routine. Say goodbye to last-minute grocery dashes. Say hello to everything you need delivered to your door. HelloFresh, a better way to meal plan.
It's unknown what Scott's official diagnoses are, but given his potential parasitic lifestyle and the seeming lack of emotion here, it would be tempting to guess that he has a form of antisocial personality disorder. However, without knowing his full history, it's hard to be certain.
After they went to sleep, I pulled her out from underneath the boat, and I just gazed on her for a minute. I laid down beside her and was just touching.
Mm-hmm. Was she still warm?
She was starting to lose it. And I forgot what the word is when the blood settles. It's stiffening. Yeah. And there's already, you know, splotches. And she was starting to get a little rigor mortis, but not too bad. Her arms, you know, they still kind of, when I drug her out, because I grabbed her by her ankles, and her arms still kind of, but her legs was a little stiff. In my head, I was thinking maybe she's just faking. There's still a part of me that was hoping.
Like she was passed out or something?
Yeah. There's another knife in the garage. It's about this long, gray blade. Got a machete handle with duct tape on it. And I worked at a slaughterhouse for 6 years, so I know where to go to, you know, any deer hunter, anybody like that that's skinned, you know how to fill the joints.
This is an interesting justification he tries to make several times throughout the interview, trying to downplay his actions as a totally normal thing any deer hunter or slaughterhouse employee would be able to do, as though there are many people in these fields that would even think of doing something this horrendous. In reality, very few people, regardless of their profession or skill in butchering animals, would even know where to begin when faced with the task of applying their skills to the body of a fellow human being.
That was taking too long, but I did. I started with her head. I cut her head off first.
Did you put any plastic or anything down, or you just left it right there on the floor?
No, that floor was covered with blood.
You moved the carpet out there, like there's green carpet or?
There's some blue carpet in there. I was going to pull it up, and my knife wasn't sharp.
Hello? Yep. Okay, thank you.
my hands, or at least I busted the bone with the axe. Then I used the knife and I cut off her feet.
Bear in mind that up to this point, Scott has maintained that he had a woman die in his home accidentally, and panicking went about disposing of the body in the quickest way he knew how. This next part, however, reveals the true depth of his depravity, and is one of the most sickening and disgusting confessions we've ever heard.
You know, I was going to eat some of her, so I kind of cut off some of her, rump and part of her back strap.
Backstrap is a term used by hunters to describe the long strip of muscle that runs parallel to the animal's spine, and is a particularly prized cut of meat and big game for being the most tender and flavorful, because it isn't a muscle often used by four-legged animals. Because human beings are not four-legged game animals and therefore cannot be split into similar cuts of meat, there's no telling what muscles Scott actually tried hacking out of Lisa's body. But just the fact he thought of doing this at all and goes on to use these terms to describe her body shows how little regard he holds for her and the life he took. Detectives are understandably thrown by this.
See, did you cut her backstrap out?
Part of it.
Did you keep any of it?
It's all in those buckets.
This is interesting because, according to the autopsy, only the lower arms, legs, hands, feet, and head were present in the buckets when collected by police. No back strap was found, though again, what exactly Scott is referring to is unknown. But his words flow too smoothly here compared to his other lies, so it seems that regardless of what he managed to actually do, he viewed Lisa as little more than an animal to be slaughtered. He went out of his way to cut out what he thought would be the tastiest portions of her.
The body's underneath the fire pit.
How about the legs? Are they in the buckets or in the fire pit?
Both.
You got a refrigerator or anything up in the garage? Any history or anything like that?
No. And I flipped her over, and I cut up her belly, and reached up and cut her heart out.
What you do with it?
And I slung it.
Is it out in the yard somewhere?
You sling it straight from the garage to the left?
No, it was like where those buckets are. There's a fence. I kind of just, because Mom was coming out.
So you just sort of slung it across the driveway?
She gets saying, but Mom got noticing them talking about what's Clyde keep smelling, what's Clyde keep smelling.
Clyde seems to be the family dog, though this isn't confirmed.
And this was Friday night?
And this was today. And I went and built a fire, and I tried to burn her remains. And I was going to bury the heads, or the head, and the other body parts.
So the pieces that you cut, the back strap and whatnot, you went ahead and burnt them, or are they in a bucket too?
They're in the buckets.
They're in the buckets. But you never did fry any of her up, or cook any of her, or nothing, or did you ever eat any of it?
Yeah.
You did? What part did you eat?
Piece of meat off a leg that, while she was in the fire.
While it was cooking? How big a piece do you think it was? Just, okay, that size of an egg.
Yeah.
Was it cooked up pretty good, or was it still semi-raw?
It was juicy. It didn't taste like blood, though. I mean, it tasted like a charboiled piece of steak.
Similarly to how Scott was trying to convince the detectives of Lisa's burning passion for him, he also seems to be trying to convince them that what he did wasn't despicable or utterly insane, because she just tasted like steak.
Well, let me ask you this. Before you cut her up, or any time during you cut her up, did you drink any of her blood, or did you have with her again?
No.
Okay. So basically what you done, you just got busy of trying to dispose of her. Did you take any other organs out? Just the heart?
You never really sure what she did, right? We possibly come up there and check on.
Because something else is in control.
So in a way you wanted her to be dead?
I don't know what was going on in my head.
It It's curious that Scott keeps mentioning how he wasn't in control of his actions while at the same time providing excruciating detail on exactly what those actions were, and at times, exactly why he did them. It's possible that he may be trying to set up a half-hearted attempt at an insanity defense throughout the interview, but isn't really sure how to go about it.
Has she made you mad or anything at night?
Not really, she just irritated me a little bit.
It's clear that detectives are trying to find some possible motive for this murder and the horrific acts that swiftly followed, as it seems unlikely that it was simply an accident. As it turns out, the next part may reveal a bit of what Scott's true motivation might be.
I know me and you talked about this last time, but I talked to you up here at Towns. I can't remember if you was telling me that you was reading books about serial killers or if it was the ladies you was talking about.
Was
you reading some books at one time?
I was just studying about them, just watching like biographies.
What's your favorite lady to watch as far as serial killers?
No, I was doing the biographies, the real stories. And I'd look up on the internet.
Like Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, my favorite one is Richard Ramirez.
Ramirez, was he the one that
He was a Night Stalker.
Richard Ramirez, aka the Night Stalker, was an American serial killer who terrorized the Southern California region in the mid-'80s, killing at least 13 people and assaulting countless others. According to some articles on this case, Scott reportedly wrote on his Facebook page on the day of Ramirez's death, "R.I.P. Night Stalker. Wish I could have met you." However, this couldn't be verified.
The Night Stalkers, John Wayne Gacy, or...
I've read about Gacy. I mean, I got on a bad serial killer kick a few years back. That's all I put on my Facebook, was just videos, like, because I don't listen to exactly what you call mainstream music. And, you know, I'd find videos of serial killers and, you know, by different bands where they're playing and, you know, this video footage of different killers. And I told her, I was like, I'm wanting to check into a psychiatric hospital and just thinking about it too much.
This admission is very interesting, as it could suggest that Scott had in fact fantasized about committing the same types of depraved acts as the serial killers he had an admittedly unhealthy obsession with, which may explain why he was so quick to start destroying Lisa's body so soon after her supposedly accidental demise. Detectives seem to start thinking along the same lines, as their next few questions focus on the ideas presented by the idea Scott may have been acting out serial killer fantasies.
These things went sour before I could get to one. Some band always kicks me out. I'll be there a day or 2 or 3.
Your phone going on.
Yeah.
Is this the
A wise man once said,
you ever heard one
to forget
thing?
how to dig the soil,
You ever tried
and the
to do
earth,
anything else?
to forget ourselves.
I'm an animal lover.
I thought you had a dog up there one
well,
time.
maybe some
Yeah.
have.
Man, I worked in a
Humans
slaughterhouse.
still know.
Where'd you work out, Champions?
I worked there on and off for 6 years.
For Charlie and them up there?
And the hard choices.
Man, I had a bad falling
Time's got
out.
its perks,
So,
don't get me wrong.
when you were having
The sweet
with her,
smell of
when she
what you
wanted
do.
you to start choking her
Get a
out,
warm
what was your
sun, cold
thoughts? What was going through your head
breeze,
then?
across her skin.
You thinking this is my opportunity, I'm just going to choke her out and live out one of my fantasies, or
I think it's a
Pretty
game.
much.
opportunity was a knocking, wasn't it?
Yeah. Hey, you know
Farm's
what?
got a way of sorting the wheat from the chaff.
We was gonna go to a different damn liquor store too, and we was right there
Just remember
about
to
to
keep
pull
your
in. And
wits
she goes,
about you.
"Wait." She goes, "You can't go to Oak County. You owe that girl, that woman money." I was like, "No, I paid her off." So she just went around, went all the way to Oak Liquor,
This is more than
instead of
just a
stopping at West Mead.
Maybe it was fate. Who knows?
Who else
This
would
last
wake up early
statement
in the
seems to be
morning,
Detective
get up their
Barton
hands,
taking a
working
weak
in the
stab
fields
at
all
one of the
day,
principles of the
and
Reed
then planning
technique,
how they're gonna do
perhaps
it all
presenting an
over
alternative
again.
theory to get Scott to admit to more details because the alternative makes the crime sound not that bad. It's at this point that the interview deviates from Lisa's cold-blooded murder and takes a rambling turn into Scott's personal life, starting with the other failed relationships with women he's had in the past and the misdemeanor charge for possession of drug paraphernalia that was still pending at the time of the murder, none of which, of course, were ever his fault. It's interesting to note that he blames the paraphernalia charge entirely on the woman he was seeing at the time, saying,
Yeah, misdemeanor paraphernalia, and man, this girl hooked up on a blind date. She was from Winchester. I couldn't get her to leave. somebody called the police or something, said that I was doing drugs and all this. I ain't no drug dealer, I'm a user.
This seems to be a running theme in Scott's life, that he never does anything wrong, the bad things that happen to him are never his fault, and that he's so irresistible to crazy women, they all immediately want to live with him. The detectives offer no comment on this, instead trying to steer Scott back to the matter of Lisa. And while Scott does answer their questions, it's now only between stories about himself, random details on his life, or any random thought that seems to cross his mind.
I don't read on here about serial killers and stuff like that. But you thinking about keeping any body parts at all?
It crossed my mind. And I thought about keeping her skull because, I'm all the time messing with masks and Halloween decorations, stuff like that. And I was like,
For those of you keeping track, Scott is now referred to the victim as a slaughtered animal and is now comparing her to a Halloween decoration, further indicating how little regard he had for Lisa Hyder's life. Eventually, the exhausted detectives wrap up the nearly 3-hour interview by reading Scott's overwrought confession back to him, and he signs it. Gregory Scott Hale pleaded guilty to first-degree murder on January 15, 2015. And though on the surface this may seem as though he was finally taking responsibility for his actions, in recent years he claims he was charged and sentenced unjustly on the grounds of religious persecution, the religion in question implied to be Satanism. However, there's no concrete evidence that Gregory Scott Hale was a practicing theistic or atheistic Satanist, or were there any signs of satanic literature, paraphernalia, or religious symbolism found anywhere near the crime scene, aside from a crudely rendered Leviathan cross scribbled on a sheet of notebook paper on a dusty desk. Some point to one Leviathan cross as a sign that Scott was a practicing Satanist. However, on this same desk, in a place of equal prominence, there was a Star Trek fan collective Borg DVD. But few have pointed to this as evidence that he worshipped the Borg Queen. Scott never mentions Satanism or any other alternative belief systems in his interview. While a handful of the news articles written after his arrest briefly bring up Satanism as a possible motive, it appears they're basing the assumption that Scott worshipped the devil on his love of metal music, the album covers of which adorn his Facebook page, and dark comedy. Scott also goes on to complain that all of the articles only include the bad things about him, allegedly writing, "Y'all only put up the bad. I've been told by a couple of people who really know me and who wrote positive things about me, or said positive things, and for some reason that never gets published. But people who don't really know me that speaks only diluted BS that is secondhand BS, and bad about me. Y'all want to smear that all over the paper." Regardless, the family of Lisa Marie Hyder can rest assured that the man who brutally murdered and dismembered this young mother of 6 will rot in prison for the rest of his life.
First time, the second time, I'm saying stuff.
The following confession of a serial killer and the crime scene photos documenting the horror he left in his wake have never been revealed before.
She got in the car. But then she drove right after she figured out what was going on and she started fighting. She started saying, wait a minute. She was drunk. And what you were? I hear her trying to make her shut up. She wouldn't shut up. Mess in the car every time. Yeah, she did. When she was diarrhea. What do you do that? Try to clean it up. What? Her jeans.
Jason Westerman was outside in his neighborhood in Gibsonton, Florida, playing with his neighbor Greg Adams when they came across something that was sure to haunt them forever. The boys were playing parachutes, a game where they put stones into plastic bags and threw them up into the air, when they noticed something odd beyond a barricade at the bottom of a dead-end road. It looked like a dead cow. The boys were curious, so they went a little closer, and that's when they realized it wasn't an animal at all. It was a human body. Around 6 p.m. on May 13th, 1984, they ran home to tell Jason's dad what they had found. Little did they know this was just the very beginning of a twisted and unbelievable nightmare. When the police arrived, they interviewed the boys before Jerry Westerman led them to the body. It was a naked woman, lying face down on her stomach with her legs spread wide apart, and both of her hands bound behind her back with a white cloth and rope. There was a rope tied around her neck 3 times in a slip knot, a different material than the kind used to bind her wrists. The woman had black hair spread around her and a piece of cloth under her head. But when the officer approached to get a look at her face, which was pressed into the grass, he realized that there were maggots covering her face. Still, she appeared to be between 14 and 30. At another part of the dead-end road, police found material like the piece of rope similar to the kind used to tie the woman's hands and some red cloth. It looked like she'd been attacked in this spot, and her body was then moved.
Can you describe the area that you left her at? If you don't remember the name of the road, can you describe what was around it?
The road dead-ended, and it was like just grass. Drove out on some grass, and it was a cow field.
She was killed by being stabbed and strangled, and had likely been dead for 2 or 3 days before her body was found. But police found something very interesting: red fibers on her clothing and body.
Okay, what happened when you got out there?
So,
You know how that's proven? You know, if you want to talk about it, fine. If you don't,
I really not.
okay, that's fine. What did you do with the clothing?
So we have to end it.
You know what she was wearing?
Grass.
Newspapers reported the horrifying news that an unidentified teenage girl was found in a ditch. Because she was left without clothing and jewelry, and she didn't have scars or tattoos, there was very little to identify her. Right away, people wanted to help and began calling in with the names of missing girls, but none seemed to match the victim. Then, after both a friend and a young woman's boyfriend called the police to say that she was missing, the police ran the girl's fingerprints against the victims. It was determined to be 19-year-old Ning Tai Long. Ning went by Lana and was from Southern California. No one could imagine why someone would hurt her. Lana was seen by one of her neighbors 3 days before she was killed, standing on the sidewalk and crying after she'd been kicked out of her apartment by her boyfriend. According to the neighbor, she asked for $10 because she had nowhere to go. Her boyfriend admitted that they got into an argument when Lana quit her job as a dancer without telling him. After their fight, her boyfriend left the apartment and she told him, "If you're going out, I'm going also." She never made it back.
How did you get her into your car?
I just asked her if she wanted to ride.
And what did you say to her?
She said, yeah.
Okay. When she got in the car, what happened then?
I asked her if she wanted to grab a drink. And she said no.
Okay, we went to the place.
A cold night.
And what did she say, or what did you say?
She started fighting and screaming. I just tied her up.
At the beginning of the investigation into Lana's murder, her boyfriend and a cab driver that was seen picking her up on multiple occasions were both looked into, but the men were later cleared. There was frustratingly little evidence, but authorities initially thought the killing was a one-off and continued looking for Lana's killer. They would soon realize the truth was even darker than they ever could have imagined. Just 2 weeks later, the police were called to another chilling scene. Louis Anthony Jordan was out walking in a wooded area near his home on the morning of May 27, 1984, when he stumbled across a horrific sight. A nude woman was lying face up just off a dirt road. At first, he thought she might still be alive and in need of help, but as he approached, he realized that she'd been dead for a while. He quickly went home and called the police. Jordan told him that he walked that same route all the time and had even done so 2 days earlier on the 25th, but the body hadn't been there then. Similar to Lana, though slightly different, the woman's hands had been tied to her waist, and the same rope was around her neck. A green t-shirt was also wrapped around her upper arms to bind her. There were slashes across her throat and wounds to her head. She looked to be in her late teens or early 20s.
So you tried to strangle her, she wouldn't choke out, and you stabbed her with a knife?
First, I hit her in the head with something.
Where'd you get her hit with?
It's like a crib kind of thing. More like a nightstick.
Okay, and how many times you hit her? Bloody letter to her?
I think just once in the head.
Okay, what took place after you hit her?
I tried to strangle her.
Did she go out again?
Yeah, but I don't know.
Why did you hit her with a club?
I didn't want her to suffer.
So you were trying to do what?
I was trying to knock her out.
So you would not have her suffer while you were doing what?
Killing her.
Once again, investigators noticed tire tracks in the area, which they took plaster casts of, along with a single footprint near the crime scene. They also found a white jumpsuit with bloodstains hanging from a tree near the body. These details of how the bodies were staged reveals how the killer seemed to enjoy the process of not only capturing, assaulting, and murdering the women, but also finding creative ways of disposing of the bodies. During an autopsy, the medical examiner used superglue on the body in an attempt to lift any latent fingerprints and dusted the skin with graphite powder, but neither came back with anything. The woman had been hit in the head with a blunt object 5 times, causing massive blunt trauma shock and a severe hematoma to the left side of her brain. But it was the cuts to her neck and chest which killed her.
I took her out of the car.
Okay.
And I stabbed her with a knife.
And where you stabbed her?
The neck.
Okay, and how many times did you stab her? Do you remember?
Couple. Once in the front. I think once on the side.
Okay, just like a inward thrust type stab?
Yeah.
The investigation began with hundreds of interviews, all trying to determine if anyone could recognize the victim from a composition sketch. Police uncovered that the young woman had been seen near some bars just before she died, but at first, no one was sure who she was. Finally, though, after a woman who worked as a prostitute saw the sketch of the victim, she began to worry that the Jane Doe was her friend, Michelle Denise Sims, who had been working with her on the Saturday before the body was found. She thought her friend had lined up a trick with some people in a van on Nebraska Avenue and hadn't seen her since then. The girl was leery to call the police herself, so one of her friends contacted the authorities. 22-year-old Michelle's fingerprints were compared with the deceased and confirmed to be her. Michelle had moved from San Bernardino County, California, where she had been a beauty contestant, to Florida 3 or 4 years earlier. While in Fort Pierce, Michelle worked as a receptionist at a massage parlor. Then in May 1984, the same month she was killed, she moved to Tampa, a decision that cost her her life. Red fiber samples were sent to the FBI to be compared against samples they had taken from Lana. And here was something shocking. The fibers on Lana and Michelle had come from the same nylon carpet. With this discovery, the police realized they likely had a serial killer on their hands. The sheriff warned the public that there might be a killer in Tampa targeting young women. He had no idea just how true that was. A month later, on June 24, 1984, Ronnie Barnes was working at an orange grove mowing the grass when he noticed a pair of tennis shoes sticking out from under an orange tree and a bad smell. Soon after, he called the police to tell them that he had found something horrific.
They told me I was trying to. And it's basically the same thing as with the other 2 girls.
And which was to do what?
Tire out. Strangled.
What?
They took her over by a tree. Put her up in some shrubs and rocks.
Right off the bat, those living in the area told the police that they had frequently seen the victim walking past their homes. Though a lot of people recognized her, the police weren't completely certain that they were following the right lead. But they found the ex-boyfriend of a girl who matched the victim's description. David Quick told the police that his ex-girlfriend's name was Elizabeth Loudenbach. She was 22. The police were sure that Elizabeth was their Jane Doe and focused on interviewing any of the men that Elizabeth had dated. For a few months, there was a lull as investigators continued to struggle to find out who had killed any of these women. But any sense of peace ended on October 7th, 1984, when Clarence Hale and his wife went into one of their pastures to check on their cattle. He stopped to relock the gate and noticed a piece of yellow cloth laying on a tree stump in an overgrown area. He started walking through the grass and suddenly saw a body lying on the ground near the corner of the fence. The woman had been assaulted and then shot in the head and the neck.
What happened?
She wouldn't strangle.
So what'd you do then?
I shot her.
You know where you shot her?
in the head.
What part of the head?
Back.
As the investigators once again began interviews, they found a woman who said she knew the victim and had actually met her while in the police stockade. She claimed that the victim told her she was in jail for prostitution, and both got out of jail at the same time. The women went to a lounge together and met up with some other prostitutes. She told the police that the victim seemed hesitant to go off with any of the men who stopped to pick them up. She seemed like a nice girl who didn't belong on the streets.
Once before that, she came up to the window and I asked her what she's doing. And she told me she wasn't what I thought she was. Medium worker, I would think. And we just got to talking.
The victim's name was Chanel Devin Williams. She was only 18 when she was killed and had moved from Winter Haven to Tampa only 1 month earlier. Just when the police thought there couldn't possibly be more victims, on October 14th, they received a call from a man who had been out hunting for artifacts with a metal detector in an orange grove near an old fort. While there, he came across a woman's bound body under a tree. Right away, investigators uncovered this girl's identity. 28-year-old Karen Dinsfriend was originally from St. Petersburg. Karen had been strangled with some type of ligature device, bludgeoned, and assaulted.
Okay, how did you go about running into her?
She was walking down the street late at night. I asked her if she wanted a ride. She offered to have $47. She needed $47 for a fix.
Okay, what happened then?
Same thing as with the others. I was getting nervous about this place. So, I think there were people around or something. Dogs were barking or he sounded close.
Okay.
So I put her in the truck and I was going to take her somewhere else.
Okay, when you got to the second one, Grove, what'd you do with her?
I took her out, drove her over to the street.
Did you kill her?
No, I drove her.
Okay, was she wrapped in the
Brown blanket.
How come with a blanket?
I've been using it to lay out in the sun.
As the investigation continued, it was uncovered that Karen had last been seen working on Nebraska Avenue, only several hours before her body was found in the grove. It seemed that Nebraska Avenue was the killer's hunting ground. A week and a half after Karen was found, Paul Botten was using a hydraulic backhoe to dig a ditch when he found the nude body of a young girl right where he was working.
Do you remember that one? Mm-hmm. And where did you meet her at?
Nebraska.
Okay. Who was that girl, you know?
Which one is this again?
This is the one on 301 that was badly decomposed that we found October 31st.
Weeks later, her fingerprints were used to identify her as 22-year-old Kimberly Kyle Hops. There isn't much known about Kimberly, except that she had last been seen as she walked with a group of prostitutes in the middle of October.
She was working. I just pulled over the side of the road, she came up to the car and asked me if I wanted a date.
Okay. So what'd you say?
I said, yeah, how much? She said, it was $30.
What happened then?
So she got in the car, and when we stopped the car, I just tied her up and did the same thing with the other girl.
The similarities in the way these women were killed is noteworthy because it shows the depths of the killer's psychopathy. Murder by strangulation is extremely morbid and horrific. It's also a display of ultimate power and control over the victim.
She had a black, collar thing around her neck. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. Was it still on it?
You tell me?
I don't remember.
Once again, investigators weren't sure that her death was related to the others, but the much-needed break in the case came from the most unlikely turn of events. 17-year-old Lisa McVeigh left her job at Krispy Kreme on November 3rd and was riding her bike home when she realized she was being followed by a car. As she passed by a church, she was knocked off her bike. That's when she felt a gun pressing to her left temple and heard a click. Lisa was forced into the car and forced to strip before she was assaulted, tied up, and blindfolded. Almost unbelievably, on this very day, Lisa had decided to take her own life and had even left a note on her dressing table. But now that she had been abducted, Lisa decided that she was going to survive, no matter what it took. And if she didn't, she was going to make sure that whoever took her was caught. Lisa felt the car jolt as her kidnapper began driving, and at first, she had no idea where they were headed. Using her jaw, she managed to move the blindfold that had been tied over her face, allowing her to see just tiny glimpses of everything around her, including the car and the fact that they drove on the interstate north of Tampa. She took note of the word Magnum written on the dashboard, the white seats, and the thick red carpet on the floor mats. Because Lisa was menstruating, she made sure to leave her blood inside the car. Her captor pulled her from the car and led them inside an apartment, and Lisa counted 32 steps up to the door. Once inside, she noted the smell of fresh paint. When the man let her use the bathroom, she made sure she left her fingerprints everywhere she could. Lisa was determined that the police would know she had been in the apartment. She also tried to learn as much as she could about what her kidnapper looked like, even though she remained blindfolded. At one point, he took Lisa's hands and brought them up to touch his face. She used her fingers to feel that he had pockmarks, a mustache, and that his ears were small. He never let her see his face, but still, she tried to feel for anything that might identify him. She also peeked under her blindfold any chance she had to catch glimpses of him. If she survived, she wanted him caught. The man repeatedly assaulted her over the 26 hours that he held her captive. At one point, the man showed Lisa a bit of kindness and washed her hair. He fed her a ham sandwich, and when she was cold, he gave her a bathrobe to wear, but kept her tied up so she couldn't escape. Realizing that she could use this to her advantage, she tried to get him to sympathize with her. Lisa made up a story and told him that she was the sole caregiver to a sick parent. She also asked him why he did what he did, and to her surprise, he started to open up. He told her he had a bad breakup which made him hate women, but instead of being scared, Lisa told him he seemed nice and even said that maybe she could be his girlfriend. One of the reasons she reacted this way, trying to find the kindness in her kidnapper, was because she had experiences in her past and knew how to react in a way that wouldn't anger the man. And somehow, it worked. As Lisa was lying bound and blindfolded next to the man, he woke her at 4 a.m. the night after she'd been taken. He asked her what he should do with her, and Lisa again said she could be his girlfriend. Instead, though, he told her to get dressed and brought her back into his car. The man claimed that he would drop her off near her house, but first, he stopped at an ATM. Lisa had once again managed to loosen her blindfold and saw the sign for a local motel and shop. She knew exactly where she was. The man apologized to her before he stopped the car and let her out, warning her that she couldn't take the blindfold off for 5 minutes. When she got out, Lisa tripped on the curb and the man caught her before she fell. She heard him leave, and terrified that he would change his mind, she pulled off the blindfold to find herself in front of a tree in a churchyard. At first, the police were a bit skeptical that a 17-year-old girl had really managed to escape captivity and doubted her story. Yet when red fibers were found on Lisa's body that matched those found on other victims, the police realized that Lisa was the reason they would finally stop the man terrorizing Tampa. Lisa gave an incredibly detailed account of everything she saw and heard, but it was the word Magnum written on the dashboard that proved to be key. Almost immediately, investigators cross-referenced the names of Dodge Magnum owners in Florida to the people who used the ATM Lisa had seen. They found a name, Robert Bobby Joe Long. And here's the real kicker. Right after Lisa's testimony, at the height of the terror surrounding the killing spree, this very vehicle had been stopped on Nebraska Avenue on November 15th as part of the investigation. At the time, the driver had been told that they were stopped because their vehicle matched one that had been involved in a hit and run. He handed over his driver's license. It was none other than Bobby Joe Long. Bobby was cooperative and told the officer that he was on his way to get lunch and that he was unemployed. He even let them take a Polaroid picture of him and his car. However, he refused to allow his vehicle to be searched. The officer simply let him go, having no idea that they had just made a deadly mistake. Lisa was shown the Polaroid, and despite the fact that she didn't see him clearly because of the blindfold, she had seen enough to identify him. She was instantly certain that Bobby was the man who had taken her. Over a week after Lisa's incredible escape, on November 16th, Bobby was arrested for kidnapping and battery at a movie theater. But what the police didn't know at the time was that they were already too late. His car was impounded, and the red fibers that were found at almost every crime scene were positively matched to the carpet of the vehicle. Bobby was then interviewed, and boy, did he have a story to tell.
You said something earlier. What were you doing that? Do you want to say that again?
I knew we needed to get caught. I just knew what. I knew she saw it. had a pretty good idea she could see underneath the blindfolds. And it was a real terrible rule trying to decide if I should let her go or not. I didn't want to hurt her.
Bobby had previously been arrested in 1974 for assault, but he explained that it was a completely different situation because he was married at the time and in the military, and he alleged that the woman who accused him had consented. Sure. On the same day Bobby was arrested, November 16th, he gave another unexpected confession. He said that he had kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered another woman, a woman whose body the police hadn't even found yet. Bobby told them exactly where to find the woman's body, and they immediately set out to locate her. The woman's skeletal remains were uncovered in a patch of scrub outside of Tampa. Her clothes were strewn around the scene. It wasn't hard to figure out her name. Her mother reported her missing on September 7th after she left for work the day before, but never made it back home. In fact, she had never even made it to work that day, which was unusual because the young woman was always punctual. 21-year-old Vicki Marie Elliott worked waiting tables overnight at a coffee shop in a Ramada Inn. She was getting ready to go back home to Michigan to study to become a paramedic, but she never had the chance. Because she walked a mile to work, Vicki always carried scissors with her for protection. She told people that men would frequently shout at her as she walked. Tragically, the scissors hadn't made a difference. They were found on the ground near her body.
She put her around one of the side streets and started to do the same thing that I did to the other girls, but she pulled these scissors out of her purse and tried to stab me.
Do you still have one?
I don't think so. It wasn't bad, it was just barely cut the skin. It was a struggle to get her tied.
But if you think it ends here, it doesn't. Not even close. Just days after his arrest on November 22nd, the police received another haunting call. Even though they had the monster in custody, they still didn't have the full story of his victims. A couple was walking in rural woods along a newly cleared drainage ditch when they saw a skeleton partially, specifically the skull, buried in a mound of sand. The body must have been uncovered as the drainage ditch was being dug. Because of the severe decomposition, it was believed that the body had been there for 3 to 6 months. What was clear, though, was the piece of rope tied around the tibia and fibula in a ligature, as well as around the hands and possibly also the neck. It was one of Bobby's victims.
The victims are still going to be the fear that your victim is still out there, and it gives them peace of mind for the rest of their life to realize that you're not still out there and they're not susceptible, and maybe they can relax and start a normal life again. So anything you do it to help the victim. Get it off your chest.
Good example. When you let out of the car, remember I told you I didn't really believe the situation when I was first made aware of it. I made a comment to me. I said, for God's sake, why in the world didn't the first thing you did was stop the first car you saw on the street? She says, John Biden, I was scared to look at another car. It scared her so bad, she didn't know who was going to be in the next car. That's what I understand that. Okay, that's the point he's trying to make. That these women feel the same way.
The woman's exact cause of death couldn't be determined, but because investigators found a braided hairband, keychain with a Rubik's Cube, a small tennis ball, and a blue lighter, the woman's family was able to identify her. 20-year-old Artis Wick had been Bobby's first victim, who he kidnapped back on March 27th, beginning his 8-month killing spree. And still, it doesn't end here. After letting Lisa go, Bobby had killed 2 more women in the span of 6 days before his arrest. 18-year-old Virginia Johnson and 21-year-old Kim Swan. Virginia was originally from Connecticut and was last seen on Nebraska Avenue. Her body was found on November 6th, just days after Bobby had taken Lisa. Kim, on the other hand, had been a dancer at the Sly Fox, but recently decided to change her life by enrolling in a program to become a medical technician. She was killed on November 11th after disappearing from a convenience store. As he was presented with hair and fiber evidence, Bobby leaned back in his seat and smiled, saying, "I guess you got me good. Yeah, I killed them. All the ones in the paper, I did them all." Psychopaths are proud of their horrific actions, will often show off about what they did, and take pleasure in the attention they are receiving. Bobby underwent psychological evaluations, and he was diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy that induced an altered state of consciousness. As well as inherited bipolar or manic depressive psychosis and an organic personality syndrome caused by tissue to the brain. In contrast, though, a third doctor said that they didn't find any indication that Bobby had a mental illness or disease except for severe antisocial personality disorder. Eventually, Bobby admitted to killing 10 women in total. It's very possible that the reason Bobby was so forthcoming with police was because he was proud of what he did, and he enjoyed describing the assaults and murders he committed. So his willingness to confess is likely due to his psychopathy, but not because he's insane. Psychopaths' narcissism is what causes them to enjoy attention and admiration. In Bobby's view, his murderous actions are worthy of admiration.
I have just one question. How'd you get a full-size woman to sit still? In my mind, Bobby, you can't tie her hands and hold a knife on her.
Got her in her stomach and climb and sit back.
Okay. There you go.
Sometimes it took more than just telling them. I don't have to physically put their hands behind the back.
Did you ever have to strike them?
Yeah, a couple of times.
So, who was Bobby Long? The 31-year-old had been born in West Virginia. His parents separated when he was around 2 years old. Long's mother, Luella, raised him by herself. She worked late nights in a bar as a cocktail waitress, and Bobby reportedly resented her multiple short-term boyfriends. Growing up, Bobby suffered from a rare medical condition as he was born with an extra chromosome, which caused him to have a specific variation of Klinefelter syndrome. Because of this, he ended up growing breasts at 13, which he had removed with surgery. But as is often the case, he was bullied. He was reportedly deeply unhappy throughout much of his life. Other symptoms of this disorder include weak bones, decreased facial and body hair, less muscle tone compared with other men, and increased belly fat. It's possible that if Bobby had any of these characteristics, he may have developed various insecurities about his masculinity. This could have triggered his desire to victimize and overpower women in order to feel strong. As a teenager, Long met a girl named Cynthia. He confided in her that his mother embarrassed him with the way that she dressed suggestively and dated different men. They eventually got married in 1974 and had 2 children together. As he grew up, Bobby was injured on multiple occasions. Starting at a young age, he almost drowned, fell from a swing, and was knocked unconscious, and suffered severe head injuries on 3 occasions. At 19, Bobby had joined the Army, but at 21, he was discharged after he was hit by a car while riding a motorcycle. His head, shoulders, and leg were seriously injured, and he spent several months in the hospital. After he recovered, there was a notable shift in his personality, resulting in being more short-tempered and physically violent. This injury may have marked the onset of traumatic brain injury for Bobby, which could have contributed to his psychopathic behaviors, though he may have had the predisposition for antisocial personality disorder, and then these head injuries made his condition worse. If there was a marked change in his behavior where he became physically aggressive with his wife, this really points to the fact that Bobby likely suffered a severe traumatic brain injury. This can impact a person's judgment and decision-making, depending on where the brain injury took place. So, after his divorce, which in itself is a stressful life event, Bobby probably became a ticking time bomb in terms of when he would begin acting on the severe anger and rage he had inside. It seems this event really spurred his crime spree because he began to use classified ads to meet vulnerable women in 1981. When he showed up at someone's house, if he found a woman alone and he had the opportunity, he would assault her. But this was just the beginning. Shockingly, Bobby eventually admitted to assaulting around 40 women, yet he was never prosecuted by the authorities for most of these crimes because the statute of limitations had already expired by the time he was caught. Though he confessed to killing 10 women, Bobby only pleaded guilty in the murders of 8. Neanthai Peggy Long, Michelle Denise Sims, Elizabeth Loudenbach, Vicki Marie Elliott, Chanel Devin Williams, Karen Densfriend, Kimberly Kyle Hops, and Ken Marie Swan. In exchange for the plea, he received 28 life sentences, except for the murder of Michelle Sims, who he was sentenced to death for killing. After 34 years on death row, on May 23, 2019, at just before 6:55 p.m., now 65-year-old Bobby Joe Long was executed by lethal injection. No guests visited him at the prison before his death. Still, 25 people were there to witness his execution, including Lisa McVeigh, the woman who had not only outsmarted Bobby, but was the reason he was eventually stopped. I wanted to look him in the eye. I wanted to be the first person he saw. Unfortunately, he didn't open his eyes. She said she began to cry once it was over. The peace that came over me is a remarkable feeling. Since her kidnapping, Lisa McVeigh Nolan went into law enforcement. She works as a deputy with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, the very same department that she had turned to in order to find Bobby Long and stop him for good.
If you owe more than $10,000 on credit cards or lines of credit in Alberta, and you're paying back hundreds each month, but balances just aren't getting closer to zero,
hold on, I'll find you some more documents. Hold on. Hold on, Patrick. I'll get you another document. Just give me a couple seconds here. Give me a couple seconds. 1, Mississippi 2, Mississippi 3, Mississippi 4. Alright, past couple seconds. Where's the other EU? Where the hell is the other? Give me a sec, that buddy boy. Hold your horses, Patrick.
She was like, let's be Bonnie and Clyde.
You said that?
Yeah. I was like, okay. And, I could hear my grandpa just yelling, them fighting, and then I started getting the rush. I started just beating her head with it. It was kind of creepy because she was, scared to death.
How did you finally get control of your grandmother? Because in the past, she's eventually been able to handle you, right? She's been able to get the upper hand. What was different this time?
I've always been in control.
By April 2017, the police in Gwinnett County, Georgia were well acquainted with 17-year-old Cassandra Bjorge and her criminal history. But when she found the self-proclaimed Clyde to her Bonnie and Johnny Ryder, Cassie's deviance rose to a whole new level. What began with an attack would lead the police to discover something far more heinous, including, horrifically, the couple living in a house with dead bodies nearby. But even this was only the beginning of their shocking depths of depravity. The majority of the following footage has never been seen before. It has been analyzed by a qualified team, including a licensed clinical psychologist, a licensed professional counselor, and a former detective, former licensed polygraph examiner, and former hostage negotiation commander and instructor. Chaos kicked off on April 8, 2017, shortly after 8:30 p.m. when police received a call from Tomoko Ryder, Johnny's mom, who had just walked in on an assault in progress in her home. Though none of the responding officers could have possibly known, they were now investigating a bizarre string of violence, and a case that would come to encompass so much more than assault. Mindy Ryder, Johnny's sister, provided this summary of the attack, starting when she and her boyfriend Kevin returned home to eat dinner.
Are you living in Canada and struggling to repay debts of over $6,000? How would you like to avoid bankruptcy by writing off to up to 80% of what you owe and slash your monthly payments by hundreds of dollars using a government legislated solution? That's right. As a resident of Canada, you are entitled to support that makes repaying your debt and rebuilding your credit faster, easier, and cheaper. With companies adding huge interest rates and late payment charges on...
I'm not sure what time it was, but we were about to eat the food we just took. and I noticed my room is trashed. Like, everything's been flipped out. Like, all my purses have been went through, and I told my brother, I know you did this. You and your girlfriend are the only ones that have been home. Like, just own up to it. Like, just own up to it and tell me I won't call the cops or anything. And at the time, he was on the phone with my mom, and he was like, so if I own up to it, you won't call the cops? And I said, yes. So that's when he hung up, and I hung up on the police. Like, I already dialed 911. And then all of a sudden, he goes out and comes back in and just sprays us straight in our faces and starts hitting us and tells his girlfriend to go grab the bat.
19-year-old Johnny and his girlfriend, 17-year-old Cassie Bjorge, then sprayed Mindy and Kevin in the face with bear repellent, which is stronger than typical pepper spray. The attack only escalated from there.
And I see her come in with the bat, and the first thing she does is hit me across my back. And I try to grab it from her, and she hits me on the head and kicking me in the stomach. And Kevin and Johnny are fighting in my room. So I chase her out to the living room, and I'm trying to grab the bat, and I hear Kevin begging my brother, like, Johnny, please don't do this. You don't have to do this. And I went in the room, and Johnny had Kevin in a chokehold, and my brother's girlfriend was in there with the bat. And so I was able to, like, grab her by her hair and, like, take the bat away from her. And I started hitting my brother, telling him to let go. And then I handed the bat to Kevin. And then Kevin was going to hit my brother, but my brother caught the bat. And then we all fought over the bat. And it was me and my brother on my sofa. And then Kevin grabbed a beer bottle and told Johnny to stop, to just let us go. And, like, we won't do anything. But my brother said he will never do that. And so Kevin hit him on the top of the head with the beer bottle. And it shattered.
So Johnny had a bat, we hold it, and then Johnny was like, bring a hammer! Because he couldn't take it by himself, basically.
And you got hit with the bat too?
Yes, sir. But I kind of blocked it here, really. I just blocked it, so it was okay. But second time I got hit my teeth too. He kicked me in the face, so my teeth fell down.
The escalation from attacking with a bat to a hammer was stopped when Johnny and Mindy's mother returned home from work. With the odds no longer in their favor, the two assailants, Johnny and Cassie, fled. However, this would eventually prove to be their downfall. In addition to his damaged tooth, Kevin had injuries to his hands, arms, and ear, not to mention the burning of the bear mace. As for Mindy, it took 7 staples to close a wound on her scalp, and she also had welts on her back from the bat. The assault wasn't the only crime committed at the Ryder house that night. In fact, it was only the beginning. Johnny and his girlfriend stole Mindy's car to make their escape. The attackers had also abandoned the vehicle they arrived in. When police ran the plate on that car, they made a shocking discovery. It belonged to a 63-year-old man by the name of Randall Bjorge. The car wasn't the only tie to Randall, though. Randall's granddaughter was Cassie. The first hint that something was wrong actually came over a week prior on March 28, 2017, when Cassie's grandmother, 63-year-old Wendy Bjorge, reported Cassie missing. Wendy and Randall had custody of Cassie for over a year by this point. They'd hoped to help her through some behavioral issues she'd been having, including using drugs and running away. Based on her recent disappearance, though, it seemed that at least one of those issues persisted. When there was still no word from Cassie after a few days, Wendy made this Facebook post asking friends to keep an eye out for her granddaughter. After that, it was radio silence from the Bjorge family. It looked like Wendy and Randall had gone off the grid just like their granddaughter. Concerned, Wendy's sister, who lived in California, asked the Gwinnett County Police to do a welfare check on April 6th, 2 days before the attack at the Ryder house. She had become concerned when she received some text from Wendy's number that didn't quite sound like her, and made her suspect that they'd actually been sent by someone else. Police attempted the welfare check, but left when no one answered the door. Even if police had forced entry, it still would have been far too late to avert tragedy. After what happened at the Ryder house, though, police knew they needed to talk to at least one of the Bjorges. They returned to Wendy and Randall's house looking for answers. This time, when no one answered their knocks, they forced their way in. Nothing could have prepared them for what they were about to find. As they walked into the house, they discovered a mess downstairs. with drugs and paraphernalia scattered about the living room, and food left out to rot in the kitchen. It also appeared as though most of the house had been ransacked. The real horrors, however, were found upstairs, hidden behind the sealed doors to the bathroom and master bedroom. But the truth of what was behind those doors wouldn't be revealed until a shocking interrogation. What police found inside added a whole new sense of urgency to the hunt for Johnny and Cassie. Despite an in-depth search of the residence, Wendy's cell phone was nowhere to be found. The investigators pinged the device and traced it to an apartment building in the nearby town of Sewanee. When police arrived at the location, they had their first stroke of luck in this horrifying and chaotic case. In the parking lot out front was the car stolen from the Ryder house. As it turned out, Johnny and Cassie had sought out sanctuary with an old friend named Jake, perhaps hoping to hide from the manhunt that was looking for them. Iwu obtained an exclusive, never-before-heard interview with Jake, who spoke about Johnny and the events of the fateful night, which led to police arriving at his home the next morning.
I met him in middle school. So 6th grade, we were 12 or 13 years old. He was always a class clown and everything. Very funny, very loud, very outspoken, but also very kind and very polite. I mean, eventually he practically became family. He was at my house every weekend growing up in middle school and early high school.
By mid-high school, however, Jake and Johnny drifted apart as Johnny became more involved with drugs and alcohol. They'd only recently gotten back in touch to have lunch a couple times, but Jake never could have expected what the relationship would bring next.
It was about 10 p.m. and I was at work. And I got the call from my mom that he was at the door. And so when I heard that he was there and that he was crying, I left work immediately and went straight home.
According to Jake, Johnny was accompanied by his girlfriend, who introduced herself as Cassandra. Jake had seen her once in high school, but didn't know her any more than that. That night, he said she was quiet and polite, and didn't give him any indication to suspect a more sinister reason for her presence. They couldn't have known the shocking secrets they were hiding.
That's when things started to take a weird turn. He said that he had gotten into a fight with his mom, which, at the time didn't seem strange because he has, has fought with his mom plenty of times before, and there's been times where he's been at my house because of it, and that she got so angry that she pepper sprayed him, and he ran to the first place he thought of, which was me.
Confused and concerned, Jake and his mom let Johnny and his girlfriend spend the night and work the rest out in the morning. But they had no idea what crises the morning would bring, or what else Cassie and Johnny had already done.
Just when we thought it was just basically a family member, old family member coming in a time for help was really, one of the most traumatizing days I've ever had.
Despite the horrors to come, the day actually started like any other.
I woke up the next morning and he was, talking to my family like how he always did when we were kids, treating them like a parent, treating me like a brother, was drinking coffee outside, catching up. And when I went to take my dog out, that's when I started to realize that things were turning for the worst. At the time, our building faced out towards the parking lot, and every day I see the same cars. But that day there was a blacked out Suburban right in front of our house, which I thought was really strange. And go back in, have a cup of coffee, and next thing I hear from my room was a blowhorn basically calling out my apartment number and Johnny's name to come outside. And it took me a second because you're not expecting to hear that at 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning, until finally the second time it happened, I got up and I started walking down my hallway. And next thing I know, there's red dot sites on the walls on my body.
Jake said that instinct took over, and he collected his sister and his mother, who had recently started to use a wheelchair, and prepared to exit the apartment. Unfortunately for the family, the horror was just beginning.
As we're about to go out the door, I see Johnny grab a knife, and I was like, "What the hell are you doing?" And he was like, what I thought could have been coming to stab me was him coming to give me a hug and say he's so sorry. And he's sorry for doing this, sorry for everything. He told me that he loved me, and he wishes he didn't bring this on us to my family. And I just kind of froze, and he dropped the knife, gave my sister a hug, said the same thing, and then we went outside to every freaking cop in the county there, a few SWAT vans, and an ambulance.
Johnny and Cassie were still inside. Initially, the SWAT team and other investigators resolved to wait them out until they were contacted by Johnny's mother, who had received a concerning voicemail from her son.
It's Johnny. Okay. I'm evil. I'm sorry. Tell Mindy I'm sorry. Tell Karen I'm sorry. I'm not well. I'm dying as we speak. I love you. I'll see you later, okay? I love you.
Police no longer had the luxury of time to wait Johnny and Cassie out. However, they also knew that the pair could be dangerous, which meant that rushing inside could be foolish. With this in mind, police decided to make an entry using a video and audio-equipped robot. Robots are often used in situations where officer safety is a major concern. Obviously, it's preferable to sacrifice tech instead of human life. Depending on the needs of the situation, the robot can make deliveries or even use weapons or flashbangs. It also has video capabilities that allow law enforcement to get a good look inside a hideout, all from a safe distance away. Even better, all footage and audio recorded by the robot is admissible in court. Right away, the robot revealed a concerning stain on the carpet outside the bathroom.
Johnny, Cassie, say something so we can see that you're okay.
Neither Johnny nor Cassie responded, and when the robot forced its way past the bathroom door, it became clear as to why. Realizing that Cassie and Johnny were in danger, the SWAT team took over and rushed inside to provide medical assistance. Unfortunately, the resulting damage to the apartment left Jake's family in a very difficult financial situation, and they ultimately had to find a different place to live. Johnny and Cassie were rushed to the hospital to receive emergency treatment. For the time being, it was unclear if these injuries were self-inflicted or if the couple had turned on each other once they realized they were caught.
The world's most popular crypto card just got better.
There would be no answers to those questions or any others if Cassie and Johnny didn't survive. Thankfully for investigators, after a few days, doctors at the hospital determined that Johnny was stable enough for an interview.
So, I mean, we do like to kind of find out, what happened and kind of get your side of the story of what's been going on the past few days, and...
He's still at the hospital.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to talk about? Is that your girlfriend, Cassie, or is it just a friend, or what? Yeah, she's fine. No, she's fine. No one's told you anything, or? Yeah, she's fine. How long you guys been dating?
A lifetime. You can't live without Cassie. Like, I don't know why. I never felt like this about any girl.
This is a bold statement from 19-year-old Johnny, considering he'd previously been married and only finalized his divorce about 2 weeks prior.
I heard her screaming.
Yeah. I think she was more upset because people were trying to help her, and from what I was told, she's a fighter and she's kind of a pistol, hard to deal with sometimes. Okay, that being said, obviously we want to talk to you about some specific stuff. You're kind of not free to go. You're here at the hospital, so...
Free to go?
You're not free to go. You're here at the hospital. So in order for me to ask you some specific questions, I got to read you your rights.
Johnny had likely been through this before, as he'd just finished serving jail time for entering automobiles and obstructing an officer.
Are you okay talking with us right now without an attorney?
I don't really feel comfortable.
Well, I don't feel comfortable here in the hospital either, so...
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable talking about it. Maybe I want to talk for like quit appointed attorney and then just say, talk to them, because I don't feel like...
Well, this may be our last shot on talking to you, because we got I decided to talk to you first, because I already know kind of what's been going on. I know Cassie's background. I know things that have been said. I know what's going on with her family. I already spoke to your family. I kind of know what's going on with your family. Obviously, you being a man, I'm being a man. We're all men here. I want to come first to you, man up, and let's talk about what the heck happened.
I don't know. I have ADD. Like, I'm a really deep thinker, but like, I would really like to talk to a counselor or psychiatrist to see what the hell is wrong with me.
Without Johnny's consent, police had no choice but to wrap things up and take their questions elsewhere. Luckily for them, there was another potential source of information just down the hall. With no answers from Johnny, police were likely very aware that a conversation with Cassie was their last chance to get a first-hand explanation for the brutal disaster scene at the Bjorge house and the chaos that followed. With that in mind, they sent in an officer that Cassie knew and who was familiar with her situation. He was accompanied by someone from the district attorney's office. It was through this interview that a bizarre, horrific, and unexpected story began to unravel.
What happened here?
I tried to kill myself.
Why would you do that, sweetie? Tell me why.
I couldn't take it anymore. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't know what else to do. And then one night, I just got like really angry and depressed, and I don't know, I just felt like the whole world was kind of just like collapsing on me, and I just wanted to end it.
This isn't the real reason they're talking to Cassie, and also not just because of what happened at the Ryder house. There's a far more chilling story lurking in the background of Cassie and Johnny's crime spree.
I think you know why I'm here. I just need to understand why. Talk to me, please. What I can't do, I can't talk to you unless you be honest with me.
I wasn't the one who intentionally thought about doing that.
What about doing what?
Say it. Once you say it, it's out.
Killing my grandparents.
This admission was a horrible confirmation of what police already suspected. Tragically, Wendy and Randall's bodies were found inside their house when police forced entry. Based on their condition, it was estimated that they'd been dead for about a week by that time. In an exclusive interview with EWU, Chris Bjorge, Wendy and Randall's son and Cassie's uncle, recalled hearing the terrible news for the first time when a family movie night was interrupted by a call from the police department.
So, I get a call back. About 10 or 15 minutes later, and he said, Mr. Bjork, I'm so sorry, but we found them. So what do you mean you found them? What does that mean? He said, we found them. They've both been killed. They've been murdered. I'm like, are you sure about that? It's like, yeah, there's no question. You know, were they perfect? Absolutely not. You know, but I loved my parents. You know, flaws and all. But it's not what they deserved.
Cassie's admission to the murders would turn out to be the least shocking detail of what she would tell investigators once she was transported to the police station for a more formal interview.
There you go. You grab a seat right here. Pull you in a little bit.
You guys a bathroom?
Can you grab the cutters?
Yep.
Despite the seriousness of her circumstances, Cassie doesn't seem too worried while waiting for police to come back with a tool to remove the flexicuffs around her arms.
Oh, let me get these things off, yeah.
Okay.
You are doing all right eating?
I was getting there.
You get them?
Yeah, I mean, these things are thick. Let me do it away from you so I don't,
Stab me.
Yeah. Oh, I just did already.
Okay.
You feel better?
Yes. Thank you.
With that handled, the investigators settled down to eat with Cassie. It's unusual that everyone is eating together and an out-of-the-box approach. Though likely a non-standard, it's a very interesting tactic to establishing rapport. It plays into the natural association to relax while eating and will likely be very effective. As the group eats, the investigators set about getting to know Cassie better.
You into sports? Obviously, I guess. Was told the karate stuff?
Kung Fu.
What's up with that stuff? Is it Kung Fu? Is that what it's called?
Well, I did this martial arts called Tang Soo Do for 6 years, and that's South Korean. And then I grew out of that, and then I found Shaolin Kung Fu, which is basically Kung Fu, but that's what they call it in Chinese. And so I started doing that, and I've been doing that for 4 or 5 years.
How's your hurting? You pretty good at it?
Yeah, I'll go to tournaments. Yeah, I mean, I'll go to tournaments all the time. I went to China for a month last year.
Wendy and Randall made the trip to China possible for Cassie. According to friends and family, they'd hoped that this trip, along with a subsequent visit to Disney World, would help Cassie get a fresh start after moving in with them. But even this generosity wasn't enough to protect them from her wrath.
Did you go, did you graduate high school or?
No.
Actually, you're only.
Still a junior.
Okay.
Technical.
At Duluth?
No. I do online K-12 international. I stopped going to Duluth in 2015.
Okay.
Because that was around the time where, like, all the stuff was happening with my parents and stuff. And I started getting scared going to school because my stepdad would literally come on campus looking around the whole campus just to find me. Like, he was going in classrooms and stuff. So I had to get, like, a restraining order.
Well, I don't want, kind of to make you upset or make you relive anything, but I just got some follow-up questions I'd like to ask you. Do you remember when you read your rights and all that?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you understand all that?
Yeah.
Cassie has read her rights, and then the police got down to business. They started things off easy by asking about Johnny, likely trying to get a feel for the relationship at the heart of such terrible violence.
You and Johnny pretty tight? Did you have feelings for him, or just kind of a boyfriend type thing? Or?
I had feelings. I still have feelings for him. I care about him.
I guess someone asked a corny question, is it love or no?
Yeah. This is what he told me. After Tybee, we went to Atlanta, and we were on, like, this, I don't know, it was like this parking lot thing, and we got to see, like, the whole city. And he told me that when we were sitting up there, that, like, for a second, he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he told me that all he could see was just me and then purple around me. And he said, like, purple is, like, a sign of love. And he said, like, ever since then, like, it was, like, love at first sight or something. Is he okay?
Yeah, he's fine. So he sends his regards and all that stuff, so.
Is he doing okay?
No, he's fine. Yeah, he actually is better off than you. They weren't that deep or anything, so he did.
Really? Man, I could have sworn he did worse than me, because I remember when we were in the bathroom, because he did it with me too. He kept going, and I kept telling him to stop. So
Yeah, it's maybe this tougher skin. I don't really know.
At this point, it was time for the police to ask Cassie some harder questions. Regardless of her forthright demeanor, police already knew from what they found in the house that Cassie was keeping some of her more callous actions to herself. They just had to get her to admit it. As she tells her story again in the interrogation room, there are key changes and omissions from the one she told while at the hospital, leaving the officers the task of piecing together the horrific truth.
the plan was that we were both gonna get both of our families. But first we got my grandparents. Then that's why we went over to Johnny's house and we attacked his sister and her boyfriend because he wanted to kill his family.
Okay.
So that's like, we stayed in town for a couple days because, we wanted to get some money, we wanted to get ready to leave. And then that plan, just going over to his house, kind of just like, it didn't work out at all. It went downhill from there.
The plan had been to take out Johnny's family members one by one, but the plan was obliterated from the get-go because Mindy's boyfriend was present when they arrived. When Johnny's mother showed before Mindy and Kevin had been subdued, Johnny and Cassie abandoned the savage attempt. Clearly, the assault that had kicked off the investigation in the first place wasn't an assault at all, but rather attempted murder.
That was Johnny's idea, because then that's the reason why he asked me if I wanted to kill my grandparents, because he wanted to already kill his family. And he was like, let's be Bonnie and Clyde.
Despite Johnny's questionable aspirations, Cassie didn't say that any of this struck her as a bad idea. In fact, it seems likely that Cassie and Johnny were a dangerous mix of two antisocial personalities. They seemed to fuel each other's anger. Had they not joined forces, it's very possible that individually they wouldn't have been able to go through with the plan. But they were both willing to do the unthinkable together, becoming the ultimate toxic personality mix.
So I guess let's start from scratch about what happened, starting from when you ran away, I guess. Is that the 31st? Do you remember, or 28th or something like that?
I didn't really run away. My grandma, kicked me out.
Okay.
Because, this is what happened. I was chilling with Johnny and my other friend Sabrina, and I came home because it was time for curfew, because I didn't want to violate my probation. So I came home, and my grandpa was asleep, and my grandma got really mad at me. And she was, saying, oh, if you don't like it here, we're just going to find somewhere else for you to stay. And she just said that out of the blue. She just got really mad for some reason. And so I was just like, if you're going to find another place for me to stay, I'm just going to leave. I'm just going to find somewhere else to go. So
Cassie goes a little bit deeper with the answer she gave in the hospital.
they kept bringing up stuff about my mom. And, my grandma would keep saying, oh, I could easily just send you back to your mom's house. Or, all this and that. And it just, I don't know, it got to a point where I couldn't take it anymore.
Despite Cassie claiming Wendy kicked her out, it sounds more like Wendy was expressing concern that Cassie was still struggling in her new situation. In fact, according to Chris Bjorge, the family had already agreed upon a solution.
So I spoke to Cassie a couple times and, said, hey, kid, I don't know if you remember Uncle Chris or not. I held you a couple times when you were a baby. What's going on? And she said, well, I got to get out of here. There's so many things that are going on. And I said, okay, well, how about you come in and live with us?
Chris and Cassie seemed friendly and agreeable to moving in with him and his wife in Florida. However, he shared that Wendy and Randall did not mention just how dangerous her behavior and aggression towards them had become. As it turned out, Cassie never did make it to Florida, instead running off with Johnny. And this wasn't the first time Cassie had run away from her grandparents. Wendy reported Cassie missing once before when she disappeared with her ex-boyfriend Tyler and was gone for over a month. When Cassie took off again, this time with Johnny, her grandparents might have expected a similar scenario to play out, ending with Cassie's eventual return. For the next few days, it did. Cassie lived with Johnny in his car, and it wasn't until one particular conversation that the dominoes of disaster started to fall.
So so I guess when do you decide to go back to your grandparents' house in the middle of the night?
It was like a couple days after, like 2 or 3 days.
Mm-hmm. You remember Saturday, Sunday? Do you have exact?
I don't really remember. Like I didn't really even know like what day it was that we went into the house.
And before you did that, did you and Johnny meet up somewhere at a park or something and talk about what was going on?
We went to Peace Ridge Park and we talked about it. At first, it wasn't my idea at first.
How did you even get, I guess, what was said? How did you even bring up? What was the context?
He first asked me, "Are you afraid to die?" And I said no. And then I asked him, "Are you afraid to die?" And he said no. And he was just talking about how we could like run away together, you know, like kind of like dream. And he asked me, he was like, "Would you kill your grandparents?" And I kind of like hesitated for a minute. And I was like, "Why?" And he was just like, "I don't know, I mean, because he knows probably everything that I've been through with all of my family. And he understands that, you know, like, all I really wanted to do was just kind of get away from everything, kind of just move on with myself. Like, I wasn't having a good relationship with my grandparents. Like, it started getting really bad, you know, like, I got a charge from them because, you know, like, I fought them, you know. I might have broken, like, my grandpa's ribs, you know, for that charge for simple assault and simple battery, you know. And it just got really worse.
Cassie uses the phrase, "you know," a lot here, and it's a way for her to try to convince them that they should understand her actions.
Was your mom ever part of the plan?
Of killing them? I wanted to.
Was it something you and Johnny discussed, or was it something you just thought of?
Well, I mean, we did discuss it, but then Johnny was like, "No, we can't waste our time on them." And I was like, okay, but I wanted to.
Johnny kind of told you not to.
Yeah.
That it wouldn't be beneficial.
Yeah, because, you know, I don't know what's really going on with my parents. You know, I mean, we drove over by their house the other day. They have new cars. You know, I don't know what guns they have in their house. You know, I don't really know what's going on inside their house. So, I mean, I don't know.
You didn't know what you would be met with.
Yeah, I didn't.
Whereas your grandparents, you knew it was kind of a safe bet.
With the victims chosen, all that remained was for Cassie and Johnny to iron out the details of their evil plan.
But how we started talking about it was, like, we started out, like, with, you know, what time should we go to the house? How are we going to do this? You know, like, what, you know, materials do we need to, you know, do this? So, you know, we started talking about that, and then, you know, so we decided to go around, like, midnight or 1:30, because my grandma normally went to sleep around, like, 11:30, 12. So we decided, like, you know, we would park down the road, and then the park was literally, like, right behind my backyard. And so I unlocked the back door. I was able to open the back door a little bit and not have the stuff in front of the door fall and make a noise. So I was able to, like, maneuver in, and then I moved the stuff in front of the door, and then I got Johnny in, and then we closed the door and locked it.
And then would you guys kind of just hang out downstairs, or just start moving upstairs?
We went upstairs. We didn't immediately go upstairs. Like, we went to the stairs and we were, like, just listening, just hearing what was going on. And we thought everything was good, and then we went upstairs and...
Did you guys have anything in your hands, or just...
I had, it's one of those car tools.
Is it to do with tire, or is it to
tire
fix
iron.
it?
It was a tire iron. So I had one of those.
Where'd you get that at?
Johnny's car. He had one in his car.
His Honda?
And Johnny just used his fist. And he brought a black book bag that had duct tape in it, and it had the tire iron in it, and it had gloves in it, because we were also wearing gloves too.
I get the feeling I need
little too.
It seems like Cassie was taking orders from Johnny, suggesting that unlike his idol Clyde, he was the mastermind while Cassie provided the means to get in the home. Johnny likely knew how Cassie felt about her family situation and her dysfunctional home environment, so he offered her a way out, a plan that may have sounded to Cassie like a solution to her suffering.
So who's first up the stairs? Is it you? He's kind of following you, or?
Yeah. I go upstairs. He goes into my grandpa's room, and then I go into my grandma's room.
Do you hear kind of what's going on over there, and does that kind of cue you off to with your grandmother there?
Yeah, he started going at it, and then, I could hear my grandpa just yelling, them fighting, and then I started getting the rush, and then, that's when I started hitting my grandma in the head.
So you took the tire iron, is it just...
I started just beating her head with it.
Based on Cassie's manner of speaking, she sounds like a typical teenager, but at the same time, she's completely emotionally detached from the incident and from her horrific actions, which some may point out as being psychopathic. As for the crime scene itself, there was no denying that the attack on Wendy was brutal. Chris Bjorge once again offered some insight into what the aftermath of the attack was like.
When I first went to Georgia, the first place that we stopped was the funeral home where they were. The funeral home worker said, there's no way that we're going to let you see them. It's just way, way too bad.
Wendy and Randall were cremated as the state of their bodies was simply too poor for restoration. Chris went on to talk about how sad it is that his parents only ever got to meet one of his children, and that his kids were robbed of the opportunity to have their grandparents. For now, Chris still keeps Wendy and Randall's ashes, and says he may one day scatter them when he feels ready. Back with Cassie, the police continued gathering details.
Was that the first hit?
Yeah.
In the back of the head?
Yeah, that's where I mainly hit her in the head. She bit me.
I took a picture of that yesterday, right?
Yeah, she bit me in my finger too, but I forgot which finger. It was on my right hand. I think it was either my middle finger or it was that one.
And when you and your grandmother used to get into it, that's kind of how did she bite you before to kind of get you off her or whatnot?
Yeah, she's bitten me before.
So when do you meet back up with Johnny? Do you leave your grandmother there, or kind of what happens?
So I started hitting my grandma, and I already had duct tape, and then, Johnny's doing his thing, and, I stopped hearing Johnny doing whatever. So he comes in the room with me and my grandma, and, he helps me, tie up my grandma with the duct tape.
How did you do that? Is it just her hands, or?
I got her hands, I got her whole head, and then I got her ankles.
Okay, with her hands, I guess.
Just behind her back.
So just like this?
Yeah.
Okay. What about anything on her head or neck, or did you?
Yeah, we kind of wrapped the duct tape around her head-ish, and then that was it.
What was that for? Just
so then she kept it on. I just got it.
And you said her ankles too?
Mm-hmm.
And Johnny helped you tie her up?
Yeah, I mostly did, but I needed a little bit of help because, she was moving around and stuff, and so he helped me a little bit, and then he went back into my grandpa's room.
It shows a profound lack of empathy that Cassie was able to continue on with the act, despite her grandmother still being alive. At the hospital, Cassie had shared some additional disturbing details about the attack.
What did Johnny do to your grandpa?
Beat him.
With his fists?
Police found bloody handprints on the wall above the bed and footprints on the sheets, suggesting that when Johnny decided his fists weren't strong enough, he resorted to stomping on Randall.
What else?
He got a knife, a big kitchen knife. He stabbed him. He slit his throat. Captain made him bleed out in front of my grandma because we dragged my grandma into the room because my grandma was sleeping in the other room.
Well, she had duct tape behind her back.
Yeah, he duct taped her too. Yeah, so Johnny started beating my grandpa and I started beating my grandma. I could just hear the blood, just gushing, and I could just hear my grandpa in pain, and then I was fighting with my grandma. I wasn't saying, she didn't know it was us, because we were masked up, we were
masked on?
Yeah, not masked, we were just kind of t-shirt and just, tied around. So, it was sort of like a mask.
Your grandmother never said your name.
No, she didn't know it was us.
You swear that to me?
She didn't know. I swear. She didn't know it was us. She had no idea.
A short time later, however, Cassie slips up. and admits that she and Johnny spoke during the attack. Therefore, there's little doubt that Wendy and Randall knew exactly who caused their suffering. Just a few moments later, she makes another serious mistake.
He picked out which knife he wanted.
Which one?
It's the sharpest one. It was like the biggest one. And then he started using it on my grandpa. And then he said it's dope.
Pause there. We. You said we started using it on my grandpa.
No, him. Sorry, it was him. I didn't touch my grandpa. I didn't use the knife on my grandpa. That was all Johnny. I couldn't have done that. So he was the one who did it.
Back in the interrogation room, it seems that Cassie has ironed out more of the details of her story, with some noticeable changes. She doesn't mention masks, and she doesn't mention not talking.
What were you doing when you went back in your grandpa's room?
I was still with my grandma, and then...
In her room?
Yeah, and then I dragged her into my grandpa's room, and Johnny asked me to go get some knives. So I got some knives from downstairs in the kitchen, and I got 3 big butcher knives. And then that's when he started, like, stabbing my grandpa. Because then I went back upstairs, because I dragged my grandma into my grandpa's room, so they were both in there. And then I asked her for the code to her safe, because I already knew that she had a safe in her closet. I just didn't know it was in the safe. So, I mean...
Did she tell you?
Yeah, I mean, like, she kept saying, like, I'll give you money, I'll give you my keys, you know, I'll give you anything you want. But, yeah, she just kept
Was she able to talk with the duct tape around her face?
Yeah. Like, she was, like, mumbling. You could still understand her, but, like, at the same time, you couldn't.
Cassie basically described how her grandmother pleaded for her life. This sort of scenario could elicit emotion from even the most psychopathic of murderers, particularly since it was coming from the psychopath's own grandmother. Still, Cassie continued on with the act.
When Johnny's stabbing your grandfather, is it mainly in the torso or? Okay.
Yeah, he just, I don't know why he did that, but he just kept going.
How many times? More than 2? More than 5?
More than 5.
Okay.
More than 5.
While she was still in the hospital, Cassie revealed yet another twisted element to the attack, having to do with why she dragged Wendy into her grandfather's room.
Why did you drag her there? Why would you do that? Make me understand that. Why would you drag? Did she not give you the code? Is that why you did it?
No.
When did she give you the code? At what point did she give you the code?
She gave me the code after I dragged her into the room.
So you did it so that she would tell you, know that you were serious.
Yeah.
Forcing Wendy to watch her husband's brutal murder is torturous. But even with that, there was more to Cassie's confession that came out at the police station.
So she told us the code, and, you know, I went in the closet because that's where they kept the safe. So, you know, I go in there, you know, I'm checking out all the stuff, and I grab the book bag, and I just start stuffing the book bag with everything, you know. Like, there was envelopes just filled with money. There was probably about, like, $1,000 that we found in that safe that they were just saving, and...
Did you know about that money, or you just said no?
Well, my grandma, it was kind of weird. Like, she was kind of giving me, like, an idea about it before. Like, she was saying, what if I just gave you $1,000? Would that just make the world a better place? I'm just like, no, I don't want $1,000, you know? So, you know, she kept saying that, and then, like, when I saw it, I was just like, wow, she actually had $1,000, and that's it. Like, that's crazy.
Cassie's tone here is an indication of her immaturity, as she likely doesn't realize that $1,000 won't get her and Johnny very far if they're planning to run away, especially once Cassie reveals they failed to manage their funds.
You got $1,000 in cash. Did you spend it all, or you got it all?
We spent it all.
Okay.
On food, money,
And the money you were going to potentially get from Johnny's family was going to be what you were going to start doing?
Yeah.
Where were you going to go afterwards?
We're going to go, like, to Florida.
Okay. Anywhere in particular?
Maybe like Pensacola, Panama City, just somewhere, you know, where we could just like escape.
Pensacola was only a few hundred miles away, and doesn't seem like a very far way to run after a crime so heinous. Apparently, though, the aspirational Bonnie and Clyde thought the distance would be sufficient. You may remember that Chris Bjorge, whom Cassie was supposed to go live with, also lived in Florida. Police questioned if he was next on the couple's hit list, but it didn't appear that they had any plans to target him or even visit his area.
So you guys put that stuff in a bag, and then basically Johnny's in your grandpa's room with your grandpa and your grandma in the room. Do you come back in there and say, hey, I got this stuff? Or okay.
Yeah, I go back into the room and I tell him that I got the stuff. And after that, he slits my grandpa's throat. And then we drag my grandma into the bathroom.
What was the reason for that? Just to bring her to the bathroom?
Yeah, I don't know why we brought her back into the bathroom. I guess we didn't want to bring her into the bedroom.
Okay.
So we just brought her into the bathroom. And then Johnny slit her throat too. And I actually hit her in the back of the head with the tire iron. Well, not the back of the head, but like right where your spine is. Because he was telling me, he was like, if you hit right there, like just one like good hit, you can just knock the person out and then they'll be dead. And she was like pretending to be dead for a while. Like I would, check up on her and I would see that she was still breathing. And I'd be like, Johnny, she's still alive. What the heck? And then like Johnny finally like made the last blow, and it was kind of creepy because she was like scared to die.
This is a particularly shocking statement, because what exactly did Cassie expect? Her grandmother not to be scared in her last moments as she's being brutally attacked. Once again, Cassie's emotional hospital interview revealed something intriguing.
He was the one who ended it for both of them, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't. He had knives too. He slipped off of their necks, and I couldn't do it. So he did it because I couldn't. She was staying strong for a while. She was pretending to be dead, but we could see that she was still breathing. She did that for a while, and then Johnny knocked her out in the back, a pressure point right with the sinus.
So you said the last blow though
was just the last hit, the
last hit with the tire iron. When you did that, you were Johnny.
Johnny
had her throat already been slit.
And then after he did that, then he slit her throat.
Wendy's body was retrieved from the bathroom, along with one of the knives, pieces of duct tape used to restrain her, and a pair of scissors. Tragically, Wendy's final Facebook post was made on the same day that she was murdered by the very girl she was trying to protect. But perhaps the most sorrowful detail came from Chris's recollection of the Bjorge house after the crime.
They loved Cassie. They adored her. When we got to the house after all this happened, the house was still like, there was the smell of decay, the smell of weed. It was awful going there. And everywhere you looked, there was pictures of Cassie. They absolutely loved her.
The investigators, however, had to keep digging into Cassie's increasingly horrific tale.
Kind of walk me through what was going on in your head. I mean, was it, like you said, the rush where it's go time, I just need to do what the fuck we came here to do?
Yeah.
Or was it like, fuck them, they gave me curfew, they deserved it, let's get the shit going?
It's both. Honestly. I stopped doing Kung Fu for a while just because, my mind wasn't there. All of my feelings and my emotions were all over the place and I wasn't able to focus. So that really affected, my Kung Fu. But when I was there, I don't know, just all of my emotions kind of just, came out when it was happening. I was just angry and I was sad, but I was heartbroken at the same time, because it was just why did all of this stuff have to, happen with my family, why did I have to deal with all this bullshit, and I just kind of really got tired of it, and I couldn't handle it anymore, I just kept exploding inside almost, I wanted to just run away and just be by myself with someone, and just start my life, I was just tired of being...
And Grandma and Grandpa were your biggest hurdles?
Yeah.
Is that how you saw them, as your biggest hurdles to being with Johnny?
No, they were my biggest hurdles because of probation.
Okay.
If I didn't get probation, I wouldn't be in this, I don't know, probation kind of really messed me up because, I was going to get a job, I was going to, start getting money, just, starting my life, and once I got probation, it kind of just, really messed up everything,
As Cassie attempted to explain her motive, things started to make less sense. It's hard to imagine a double homicide leading to the start of a good life. Additionally, Cassie mentioned several times that she wanted to get away from her family, but never explains why she needed to murder them in order to accomplish this. She could have easily disappeared with Johnny to another city or state. What was likely stopping her was money, or lack thereof. She makes it sound like her grandparents were a barrier, stopping her from getting away once and for all. But really, it seems that Cassie needed to kill them in order to get the cash she suspected they had in the safe.
Obviously, when you guys were done with everything, you had some blood on you, I bet.
Yeah, I had some blood on my face.
Okay. Did you change clothes?
Yeah.
Were you in the house when you changed your clothes?
Yes.
You had extra clothes because you lived there?
Yeah.
And what about Johnny? Did Johnny have to change clothes?
Yes.
What did you guys do with those
We
clothes?
put them in a trash bag, and I think we left the trash bag in my grandpa's car.
Okay.
With the knives that we used. It was all in like one trash bag.
And then did you guys pretty much just leave upstairs, or?
Yeah, well, after that, then we closed the doors. And then we were just checking around, seeing if everything was okay. And then I started grabbing my clothes and started stuffing the bag with my clothes. And then Johnny's, walking around doing his thing, checking to make sure that they were both dead. And checking to make sure if we didn't forget anything. Then we left, and then we came back to the house.
When you guys left, where'd you guys go to?
We went over to like Kroger or Publix to go get something to eat, and then we went back to the house. We just kind of like chilled there.
That's right. They chilled there with the bodies of her grandparents nearby while they ate. Typically, if a person can eat after committing such a horrific act, it's an indication of a lack of remorse and a total emotional disconnect from the victims. Something Cassie didn't mention was that they abandoned Johnny's car outside the grocery store they visited and switched to driving Randall's car. But she's still withholding a few despicable secrets.
You guys were, I guess, together for the 2-3 however many days at the house. When you guys left, did you go to make any purchases to buy some new clothes using credit cards or anything?
Yeah.
We got receipts in that. So do you remember whose credit card you used?
It was my grandma's credit card.
In reality, Cassie and Johnny were in the house with the bodies for a week.
What about men? They carry wallets. You take grandpa's wallet?
I couldn't find his wallet, so I had no idea where his wallet was. So I just had my grandma's wallet in her purse.
They hid it underneath his bed. They found his wallet. So, smart guy, because we almost didn't find
His
it.
wallet and his cell phone were under his bed.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess that's where he started hiding it.
It's eerie how this makes Cassie laugh. Her jovial reaction and laughter are indications that this was all a game, like someone solved a riddle for her and she found it amusing. Cassie also admitted that she first took Wendy's phone during the attack to prevent her from calling for help. She also confessed to impersonating Wendy when concerned family members reached out.
Now, when family from California was trying to contact your grandma, tell me about that.
I took her phone.
And
I told them that everything was okay.
you did. You sent the message?
Yeah, I was texting her. There was other people too.
What do you mean other people? Other friends of theirs trying to reach out?
Yeah.
You texted all those people also?
No, I just texted Sylvia.
What did you text?
Everything's okay. Don't worry. I'm fine. And then they started freaking out. Like, there was this lady named Denise and a couple other people that I don't know. They're like my grandma's friends. And they were just like, hey, I hope you're okay. Blah, blah, blah. I didn't even open the text. Like, I just sort of read them and then just ignored them.
Police had acquired some other shocking evidence, and it was time for them to reveal what they knew.
Did you guys ever chill with anyone during that week at all, or no?
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we chilled with some of his friends, one of my friends, and kind of a mixture of both of our friends. Because we sort of had, like, the same friends-ish. Like, yeah, we were just chilling with them. You know, we would just go meet up with them. We would never have anyone come over to the house. We were just like, that's a no. That's a big no-no.
This is a lie, and the truth, when revealed, is even more horrific than you can imagine. The investigators would revisit the question of Cassie's interactions with her friends that week. For the time being, they learned that Cassie even went to her martial arts class just like normal that week, and slept in the TV room downstairs to stay away from the decaying bodies of her grandparents.
Did you do anything to the doors, or?
Johnny did. He glued the doors.
Okay.
He went in my garage and found what's it called? I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, he did that.
The point of that is what? Just
He just did that. He just decided to do that. He didn't tell me. I just watched him and I was just like, okay.
Once again, Cassie isn't telling the full truth here, holding back the disturbing reason why Johnny Culp the doors closed. Investigators will push her for that final damning information soon enough.
was there like ever a snapping point, or I mean, do you feel bad about what happened? Do you think she deserves what happened, or what? You know, how are you feeling right now? I'm not in your shoes.
With my grandparents?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel terrible. I mean, I feel like the worst person on the planet. But at the same time, it was kind of just like, I don't know. I mean, I feel heartbroken, but I don't know. It's really weird. Like, I'm really sad about it because, you know, like, there was so much stuff going on between me and my grandparents already. Like, I couldn't handle it anymore, you know?
Like you said, with his follow-up question, though, I mean, did they deserve it? Did Grandma deserve it? Did Grandpa deserve it? Or was it kind of just more getting away from your own family?
It was more kind of just getting away.
You don't think that Grandma did anything?
I mean, I was pretty pissed at her for, you know, the couple times that, you know, like, she would call the cops on me for, you know, no reason sometimes, or, like, a lot of the stuff that she would say would be really offensive because it would be about my mom.
As you remember, Cassie wanted to include her mother in the string of murders she and Johnny planned to commit, so it doesn't really track that she would be so offended by her grandmother's remarks. Regardless, Cassie clearly demonstrates that she had some built-up anger toward her grandmother, but it's still unclear what she thought her grandfather did to be subjected to such an awful murder.
Who did you have a more contentious relationship with? Who was the one you were butting heads with all the time?
My grandma.
Your grandma more so than your grandpa?
Yeah, I couldn't talk to my grandpa. I did not have a real good relationship with him. Like, you know, before we did, but then, I don't know, like, I wasn't able to talk to him.
A person who was truly traumatized by the event would struggle to verbalize or even think about the story. The memories of what occurred would be far too painful to cope with for any typical individual. Cassie speaks very matter-of-factly, as if killing her grandparents was the same as committing any other minor violation of the law. Despite recalling her horrific actions, Cassie remains unruffled while the officers take a quick break. But her attitude is finally about to change. Instead of questioning her story further, the investigators decided to confront Cassie with evidence of exactly what she'd been trying to hide from them.
Hey, do me a favor. You gotta take a look at that. That's you and him, right? Is that your grandparents' house? It sure looks like you're living room in your grandparents' house.
How would that be possible?
Who's taking that?
That couldn't be at my grandparents' house. There was no one at my grandparents' house, so that could have been at my grandparents' house.
Well, I mean, I didn't shit this out. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Who, you know what I'm saying?
Let me watch it again. I got it. That must have been before.
This is the video police just showed Cassie, which seemed to elicit her first emotional reaction in her second interrogation so far. The question is why?
People have to say about you, like, I don't listen to people, like, I love you. You kick ass.
Who's over there?
That might have been like...
Your grandparents didn't like Johnny, so when we see at your house much.
Like, he didn't go to my house at all. Like, I mean, that couldn't have been at my house. That had to been at someone else's house, because we had no one at my house. It was just me and Johnny.
I mean, you've been honest with me. I saw that, and obviously I've been at your grandparents' house. You know what your grandparents' house looks like, and just even the stuff said almost seems after the fact, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Johnny wasn't allowed at the house at all, as Wendy and Randall considered him a bad influence on Cassie, rightfully so. While it was possible that Johnny had snuck inside for a visit, the investigators suspected a far more sinister explanation. Cassie is left alone for just a few moments before the investigators return to drop another bomb.
Hey, Cassie, who's Sunshine?
Sunshine? She's one of my friends.
Was she at your grandparents' house?
She's been there before.
Was she there during when you guys were hanging out there? You sure? Or?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't remember having anyone over at my house.
Just as Cassie had been holding back key parts of the story, the investigators hadn't told her outright that they already know what she's been trying to hide, or that they'd already been in touch with some of her friends, including Sunshine, who was able to confirm the final shocking piece of the puzzle.
Did you ever hang out with Cassie at her grandparents' house?
Yes.
You probably already know where I'm getting with this.
Yes, I was inside the house while they were dead. I didn't know that they were dead.
No. Yeah, that's understandable. Just, I guess let's back up then. When, because that's the main thing obviously I'm
I
curious.
don't know when exactly it was, but they had been inside the house for a while because you could smell it once you walked inside the house.
Are you saying it smelled like shit? What did it
I didn't think anything of it because...
Did you ever ask him, like, why does it...
I did, and Johnny said that it was just because he hadn't flushed the toilet.
The police left Cassie alone for a short time again, and this time she appeared to show some real emotion. It was short-lived, however, as the police soon returned, armed with Sunshine's story, to confront Cassie again.
We got a problem, man. I mean, as you know, I'm a cool dude. So is she, okay? I've been doing this longer than you've been alive, okay? I'm a no bullshitter. I don't know what those DA investigators, I don't know what type of, how many times they talk to you or that. We're different in that aspect, okay? I'm cool as shit with you, if you're cool as shit with me. But once lying and stuff like that starts, I have a problem. I believe that there were people at that house, okay?
It was probably with Sunshine.
I mean, I just want to know if or anything like that. Unfortunately, you're in this, okay? There's no saving face right now.
So a lot of this was on the news, okay, as you can imagine. So he's been getting phone calls about you inviting people over to your house. So who was there?
The only person who I can think of would be Sunshine and her boyfriend.
While it might be true that they were the only visitors, multiple friends and acquaintances of Cassie told police that they'd received invitations to the house that week. They all turned her down for various reasons. If Cassie had it her way, there would have been far more visitors.
So for all these people to be inside your house, we're going to both have to assume that it was after you guys killed your grandparents.
I'll be straight up, dude. We heard about a conversation that took place inside there where someone was bitching about the smell. And Johnny's like, no, dude, it's just sewage. There's a sewage problem upstairs. Is this not?
That never came up.
Now, that could be rumors, when kids talk, rumors.
That never was a conversation that came up. The only people who came over to the house was Sunshine.
So they did come over to the house after you killed your grandparents?
Yeah, I mean, all of it was like one big rush. I don't remember what day they came over.
I'm not asking for a day. I'm just asking for in 7 days after you guys killed your grandparents and before you went to go attack Johnny's family.
Yeah.
Sunshine and Alex were at your house.
Yes.
Cassie's story was changing consistently. As if what Cassie had shared already isn't shocking enough, officers also found recordings of Cassie and Johnny being intimate, filmed inside the house after her grandparents were killed. Finally, the last of Cassie's cruelty was about to be revealed.
Johnny, you said, was using what we know to be caulks the doors. Was that immediately after, or was that before people came over?
It was before people came over.
Okay, so...
I even poured bleach on them before he did that.
You poured bleach on Grandma and Grandpa?
Yeah.
And you left one of the bleach bottles in the bathroom next to Grandma?
Yeah.
Why did you pour bleach on them?
Johnny told me to.
For the smell? When did you pour the bleach on them?
It was like a couple days after. It was before we left the house to go chill with some friends. We did it before anyone came over to the house.
With that, the awful truth is at last exposed. Before taking Cassie for fingerprints and photographs, the investigators leave her with some parting thoughts.
Okay, let me ask you this then. You literally have showed no emotion towards your grandparents, and I don't have a problem. I don't know the life that you were having, and I guess I can kind of understand that you wanted to sever that part of your life and start over again, okay? But why are you showing emotion when I brought up Sunshine? What the hell is this chick? You know what I'm saying?
She's just a close friend. She was there most of the time when I was going through stuff with my parents.
Anything else? It only seems that you're sorry you got caught, that you had people over after. You don't seem to be sorry that you killed your grandparents.
I am.
I'm just letting you know. I'm just letting you know. Not if you need anything.
Cassie was able to remain mostly void of any extreme emotions for nearly 2 hours as she talked with the investigators. However, now the consequences of what she did may be sinking in. Her distress didn't last long, though. Her behavior just a short while later indicates exactly how seriously she takes her actions. By the time the case came to court, the wannabe outlaw couple were not as close as they once were. Johnny and Cassie reportedly broke up, and each blamed the other for the crime. Eventually, they both pled guilty to charges of murder, aggravated assault, and theft. They were both given 2 life sentences plus 21 years, and will be eligible for parole after 60 years. Before being escorted from the courtroom, Johnny read a prepared statement apologizing for his actions. His former friend Jake speculated that if he hadn't met Cassie, he wouldn't have gone down such a dark path in life. Despite the horror of his parents' deaths, Chris chooses to live life as a survivor rather than a victim, and prefers to focus on the joy he finds in memories of his parents rather than the tragedy of their death.
My mom, she was very proud of the fact that she was short and ornery, but her mouth made up for her height. You know, and that's not bad mouthing her. That's something that she said all the time. She was a wisecracker. She was fun to be around. So I try to honor them every day with what it is that we do.
We can do this the nice way, or we can do it the hard way, and I can release my bipolar. Tell him to release Gavin. And Ellie, thank you. And I know I'm being recorded. You.
I'm trying to find some more documents. Documentaries! No, I haven't hit the fence yet. Not yet. Give it time, give it time. It'll come, it'll come. You know. It'll take what it takes. I might jump on PS5. You know, hit up some Call of Duty. Maybe I'll hit up some Call of Duty. I just got a ton of RC parts in today. About to make my RC dump trucks maybe tonight or tomorrow. I'm not too sure. Oh, but tonight maybe. I don't know yet. We'll see. We'll see. We shall see. Maybe I might just build the RC truck to dump truck tonight. So I got my printing my last two panels off for my cattle hauler. So I got that going on. And yeah, should be good. I put some I updated the community page. Yes, I did. Go check out the community page. Check out the pictures I've done. Yes, go check out the pictures. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. It's pretty cool. Although I should get to play some Spider-Man here. That's what I should be doing. Should have been playing some Spider-Man. I don't know yet. I'm not feeling to playing Spider-Man right now. Come on. I can play some ATS if you guys want. Some ATS. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think? Tell me what you think. I could play some ATS. Only if you guys want me to. It's up to you. I won't be through. It's about as good as you. You'll never see me to be true. You'll be with me, and I know for sure. It's about to be really true. Oh, yes, it will be true. Only for about you. What sounds good? What do you guys want me to do? Play PS5 or play some American Trucking Simulator? You guys pick. I would play Spider-Man, but I don't want. I'm too tired to even get into it. So, up to you guys what you want me to do. Don't be afraid to be a fool like me. Don't be a fool like me. Don't be a fool like me. Doompa dooda bum 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 bum. Don't be like a fool like me. Bum ba dum ba da da dum dum. Hurry up and pick. What do you guys want? What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? Pick, pick, pick. Pick, pick, pick what you want. Pick what you want. What do you want there, Patrick? PS5? Or Trucking Simulator? You pick, buddy. You pick, you pick, you pick, and I shall figure it out. You didn't tell me, Patrick. What do you want? What do you want from me? What do you want? Do you want a bullet? Do you want a bullet? What do you say, Patrick? Come on, man. You didn't tell me what. You want to go play Battlefield? Do you want to watch me play Call of Duty and get my ass kicked? Hey, you want to watch me get my ass kicked? I could do that. I could make you watch me to get my ass kicked. Yes, you could. You could very well watch me get my ass kicked. I'll get my ass kicked the big time. No, yes, I would. Yes, I could. Okay, sounds good. We'll see you on Call of Duty. And for the other ones, please don't forget to hit like, share, comment, subscribe. Until then, we shall see you all on in a few minutes. Thank you. Bye-bye.